What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories.
5 rupees. Chapter 101. Advertise here. What? All the murlocs in the bar were incomparably shocked with their eyes wide open, their mouths wide open at this moment. A bounty of 3.885 billion is offered. Such an astonishing amount. What kind of strength and status does the man in front of me have? It is unimaginable that Brother Karma and Brother Sebastian have joined such a pirate group. As that weak, young and handsome human being so great. A sound after another, flowing from the fish people's hearts, made him feel a little suffocated. Especially Fisher Tiger, Arlong, Horty Jones, Jinbei and others, the guys who know something about the pirates, their pupils contracted, and they couldn't speak in shock. A pirate group at the same level as Roger, Whitebeard, Shiki and other big pirates, Black Flag. Such a fierce guy, but he looks surprisingly gentle. Fisher Tiger thought. He saw the human men surrounded by the crowd, raising their full wine glasses, and shouting with a laugh, since everyone is Karma, Sebastian's brothers. That is my brother of Jiāng Liú. Come and have a drink together. After speaking, the man looked up to the sky and poured the drink into his mouth. Such a posture has gained the goodwill of the fish people even more. Originally they were very opinionated about humans, but Karma, Sebastian surprised them. At this moment, Jiāng Liú didn't care about their murloc status, and it made them feel a different kind of feeling. At the very least, this man is different. There is no discrimination or difference in the eyes of the murloc. In the next second, countless wine glasses were lifted, and everyone was infected by Jiāng Liú and started drinking. Murloc Street. This day was very lively, bursts of laughter came out. The members of the Black Flag Pirates group quickly hooked up with the fish people and began to talk about their adventures and their battles, which caused waves of exclamations. At the same moment, in the Undersea Dragon Palace Kingdom. The members of the Black Flag Pirates, are you here? Neptune's eyes were full of solemnity, and he was naturally very clear about this group of newly emerging Dark Horse pirates. 2 great pirates with over 3.5 billion are enough to shock the world. And such a guy, coming suddenly, immediately made him nervous. They went to the Fishmen Island. It seems that the cadres of the pirate group, Karma and Sebastian, knew the guys on Murloc Street. The soldier underneath said in a deep voice. Karma, Sebastian, these 2 guys came from the Fishmen Island. I didn't expect to be members of the Black Flag Pirates. It's really surprising. Neptune sighed lightly. He clenched his fists and frowned, but in the end he dared not make any decisions. Facing the famous Black Flag pirate group, the Undersea Dragon Palace Kingdom was too weak. Now, I can only hope that they will leave soon. The Fishmen Island is still suffering a lot. The persecution of mankind, the nobles of the world, and the invasion of human traffickers made him feel heavy. In the world, there are all kinds of discrimination against the Fishmen Island. These have also aroused the contradiction between murlocs and humans. Neptune had no choice but to face such a situation. He once thought about contacting powerful pirate groups such as Whitebeard to gain their protection, so that the Dragon Palace Kingdom would be safer. But obviously, this is difficult to do. After all, the pirate is not a kind guy, and can give out his kindness infinitely. Black Flag. Looking towards Murloc Street, Neptune was lost in thought. He didn't know the Haichi gang, but Karma and Sebastian knew everything in his mind. Among the 2, Karma is not a kind guy, who often fights and makes troubles in Murloc Street when he is young, but Sebastian is very stable and friendly. In addition, there is also a connection with the Dragon Palace Kingdom. If you can give something and get the asylum of the Black Flag, it will be a good result for the Fishmen Island. All you need is a flag, and those pirates who come and go, don't dare to do anything wrong. Neptune gritted his teeth and whispered. The world government does not expect it. The powerful pirate group is a flag that can play a more effective and powerful role in sheltering. Murloc Street. In the bar, there is a crowd of people. Jiāng Liú didn't know when. He put his arm around Fisher Tiger's neck. How about? Tiger, are you interested in being a pirate? Can I do it too? Boss Jiāng Liú, can I really be a pirate with you? Fisher Tiger widened his eyes and said loudly. Of course. To do things like pirates, you just have to have feet, no technical content. Jiāng Liú grinned. He swept his eyes forward and waved his hand. Everyone on Murloc Street can be a pirate and join our pirate group. I, Jiāng Liú, need you to form a Murloc pirate group. Think about it. In the future on the world stage, you will be famous all over the world. How exciting this should be. Jinbei was taken aback, and Horty Jones' eyes lit up. Arlong clenched his fists excitedly, and looked at Jiāng Liú's expression in awe. How courageous should this Black Flag captain be to accept murlocs into his pirate group? But, boss, if you do this, there will surely be human beings that will be dissatisfied with you. The murlocs, we murlocs, in the world, we are still treated with colored eyes. Sebastian said with tears welling up. The original lively bar suddenly fell into silence, and the fish people lowered their heads and quietly clenched their fists. Jiāng Liú was taken aback, and after a glance, he suddenly understood. Whether it is Fisher Tiger, Horty Jones, Arlong, Jinbei and others, they all yearn for life outside. However, it is normal for humans to discriminate against murlocs. In this case, if someone comes into contact with them and mingle with them, there is no doubt that human anger will rush to this person. Ha 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 ha. After a loud laugh, Jangl Liú suddenly stood up. His voice was flat but powerful. If I'm Jangl Liú, I'm a black flag, I will care about what the world thinks. So, after a pause, Jangl Liú's eyes sharpened, and an overbearing aura spread to the audience. The dream of our entire pirate group is my Jangl Liú's dream. There is no need to realize it. His eyes were bright, followed by another word. Murlocs, and humans. It's the same existence. Deafening, all the Murlocs trembled. These brief words even made Fisher Tiger shed tears, and Hody Jones burst into tears. On the side, Letterfield, Cyrus, Waldo and others smiled. This is their captain. Fearing the world and defying conventions, he always has the principles that he adheres to, and a set of methods of dealing with others, and he doesn't care about the world's views. Chapter 102. Advertise here. Jangl Liú's voice reverberated in the bar, causing countless Murlocs to lose their voices and make them cry. No one knows how much Murlocs have suffered in the confrontation with humans, and how many strange looks they received when they walked out of the Fishmen Island. At this moment, they felt approval. A big pirate with a bounty of 3.885 billion from the world, his acknowledgement. Silent in the bar at the moment. So, Fisher Tiger, Jinbei, Hody Jones, Arlong Boy, are you willing to join my pirate group? After a long time, Jangl Liú's laughter sounded again. Woo 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 woo. There was crying, and Arlong cried loudly and nodded at first. Yes, I am willing, I will follow Big Brother Jangl Liú for the rest of my life. The invitation of a world-famous big pirate has a tremendous impact on young people like Arlong. When the other party gave him enough respect, this shock could instantly change into an unspeakable reverence and admiration. There is no doubt that Jangl Liú has become the most respected man in Arlong's heart. In Arlong's eyes, the man with double knives was shining all over at this moment. Tiger. Jangl Liú called again. I do. But. Fisher Tiger nodded quickly, but soon he frowned again. Speak your concerns. Jangl Liú said. Our joining will definitely have an impact on you, Big Brother, so I am wondering whether, if we are willing to become pirates in Fishman Street, we can build a pirate group first. Subsequently, in the name of this pirate group, join the Black Flag, so that the influence on you will be relatively small. Fisher Tiger said cautiously. Jangl Liú blinked, then grinned. There is no difference to me, and no difference to the world. After a pause, he said again. But if you have this idea, Tiger, do it boldly. Fisher Tiger clenched his fists, his eyes excited. Yes, boss. Karma next to him slapped him on the shoulder. Call the captain. At this time, Hody Jones gritted his teeth and said, I want to follow Big Brother Jangl Liú and join the Black Flag directly. Tiger, if you want to start a new pirate group, do it. Anyway, it's the same as what Jangl Liú said, it's your own person, there is no difference. However, yours, in my opinion, is really dangerous. Arlong also shouted loudly. I also want to follow Brother Jangl Liú. Jangl Liú grinned, slapped Hody Jones on the shoulder and hugged him. It seems that you have a lot of ideas. Then stick to your dreams, Hody Jones. Arlong stay on the boat, Tiger in your district build a new pirate group, but you must do it for lousy. Hearing this, Fisher Tiger nodded his head. I will definitely come on. As long as the captain needs a word at any time, no matter where we are, we will come. Jangl Liú let go of Hody Jones, who was still unconvinced, and if he smiled deeply, the latter faintly said nothing. He filled the drink and raised the glass. Then, to our future. Everyone toasted and laughed out loud. Cheers. When everyone in the bar was drunk, Hody Jones came to Jangl Liú's side, and finally couldn't help it. Captain, I don't understand, why do you agree with Tiger's approach? He wants to build a pirate group. In this way, can he still be regarded as a Black Flag person? Jangl Liú had bright eyes and smiled upon hearing the words, of course it counts. Hody Jones was stunned. He pulled the opponent to sit down, and then said softly. Tiger, he has his own persistence, has his own dream, or in other words, everyone has his own dream. He wants to use his own way to realize his dream. This is an attempt to dream. As his captain, I have no right to stop him. With some remarks, Hody Jones was stunned, and then he began to think. No matter what his new pirate group is, what is its name, there is a black flag behind him, with my shadow, then it belongs to the Black Flag. Like you, like Arlong, we are all our own. Jangl Liú's words came into the ears of Hody Jones. What about you? What is your dream? Soon, Jangl Liú asked him again. Hody Jones touched his head, a little embarrassed. I just want to be rich and stronger, and besides, just sail with the captain. Of course, if you can become a small cadre of Haichi in the future, that would be even better. Jangl Liú grinned, patted the cute guy in front of him again, and praised, it's a great dream. Hody Jones was surprised. Is my dream also great? Of course, everyone's dreams are amazing. Dreams about this kind of thing, but no matter how big or small it is. Jangl Liú gave a thumbs up and bared his teeth with a smile. Hody Jones was shocked by the man in front of him, and was completely in awe. This man is really a great guy. Afterwards, the Black Flag pirate ship received a short supply of supplies, and 2 days later, it was ready to set off. The Fishmen Island is just a transit point, and their ultimate goal is mainly the City of Seven Waters. Then Tiger, Jinbei, I look forward to your good news. Let us see your reward list as soon as possible. HMPH, if you don't follow Brother Jangl Liú, you will definitely regret it. Jangl Liú, Karma, Hody Jones and others spoke in turn. Fisher Tiger also waved vigorously. We will definitely go to sea as soon as possible to catch up with everyone's pace. Jangl Liú smiled and nodded. The people behind him were already boarding the ship. When there were only 1 or 2 people left, he also turned around and prepared to leave. At this moment, a group of people from the port rushed over. Captain of the Black Flag Pirates, please stay. The Murloc who opened his mouth was nervous, with fine sweat on his forehead. Jangl Liú was stunned and looked there. It's a member of the Undersea Dragon Palace Kingdom, Captain. Hody Jones said. His eyes narrowed slightly. Jangl Liú waited quietly. It's not in a hurry to leave. Soon, people from the brigade came over, and one of the huge bodies was the most eye-catching. Neptune, he came here in person, what is he going to do? Hody Jones was a little surprised. Jangl Liú thoughtfully asked, which pirate group's flag is on the Fishmen Island today? Captain, the Fishmen Island does not belong to any pirate group. Hody Jones said. Jangl Liú smiled in his eyes. I may understand what he is going to do. Chapter 103. Advertise here. The black flag hunted and trembled. On the spacious deck, Arlong looked forward, sitting cross-legged, one large and one small figure. Hody Jones was standing next to him, and further forward, there were cadres and crew members such as Karma, Sebastian, Cyrus and so on. The two also brought some other partners, who are currently trainee crew members, just like Leonard. Hey, is this the king of the Fishmen Island? It's so big. Leonard grinned. Yes, I don't know what he wants to do with the captain. Hody Jones glanced at each other, nodded and said. I heard from the captain that his daughter is very beautiful, real or fake. Leonard said again. As far as I know, Neptune currently has no daughters and no marriage. Hody Jones whispered. You guys intern, keep your voice down. Waldo turned the iron ball in his hand and said softly. Leonard smiled, not caring, but did not speak anymore. Arlong and Hody Jones hurriedly stood up straight. Everyone's eyes are now looking at the two cross-legged figures on the deck. I probably understand. A gentle but powerful voice came out, and everyone was concentrating and holding their breath. So, Your Majesty Neptune, do you want a banner of our black flag? Jangl Liú chuckled. The purpose of the king of the Dragon Palace Kingdom was basically the same as what he thought, for his shelter. Yes, I want to ask Your Excellency a banner to deter the pirates and Xiao Xiao who are plotting against the Fishmen Island in the world. Neptune said in a deep voice, his expression serious. After a pause, he spoke again. Of course, I will pay a certain price to repay you for all this. Jangl Liú narrowed his eyes. The Fishmen Island hoists the black flag. There are many factors involved. His Majesty Neptune really needs to pay something. It is not that simple to shelter one side of the site. While gaining benefits, we must also bear risks. The sensitivity of the Fishmen Island in the world is even more predictable. At that time, pressure from the world government and pirates from all sides would follow one after another. There is no doubt that the Black Flag pirates can take up such pressure. We need food, treasure, and precious wood. Neptune heard the words and nodded solemnly. I can understand food and treasure, but what do you want wood for? My boat needs to be changed. I believe, Your Majesty Neptune should have suitable wood here, right? Neptune was stunned and laughed. It is natural for me to be able to help Captain Jangl Liú. Jangl Liú nodded, stretched out his hand and smiled. Then, thank you Majesty Neptune. A very important matter was negotiated by the two in a moment, and Neptune left with a serious and excited expression. After a while, the precious wood, with the help of the Murloc Hercules, was transported to the Shanghai pirate ship. They are all ebony trees on the precious deep-sea giant tree Eve, and they are not inferior to the name of the treasure tree Adam. In addition to Adam's tenacity, it also has the characteristics of lightness. The boat built is extremely fast in the water, as fast as a fish. Listening to the words of the crab general, Jangl Liú tried to lift a piece of wood, which was indeed too light, but at the same time it was as tough as the tip of a knife. Is it the wood as famous as the treasure tree Adam? Thank you Majesty Neptune for his generosity. Jangl Liú exclaimed. For your friendship with the Fishmen Island, Your Majesty Neptune is very sincere. Crab's words are also beautiful. Jangl Liú nodded. After we leave, the black flag can be hoisted. Thanks to Captain Jangl Liú, the Fishmen Island will remember your kindness. Crab will be grateful. Happy cooperation. Jangl Liú smiled. He will not interfere in the management of the Fishmen Island. He only needs the treasure and materials contributed by the other party every once in a while. This is indeed very important for the black flag, which is now in its infancy. Recruitment of personnel, ship maintenance, daily food, all of which cost money. The large fleet is just the maintenance of the fleet, which is an astronomical number. It can also be understood why the world's top pirates have a wide range of power. Without these territorial support, only strong strength, obviously cannot support the status of the overlord of the sea. When everything was ready, the Black Flag pirate ship slowly left the port of the Fishmen Island. In the Dragon Palace Kingdom. Call, are you leaving? Neptune said softly, looking at the inky black flag covering the face in his hand, his expression sighed. For it, the Dragon Palace Kingdom has to pay a lot. But compared to a peaceful life, all this is worth it. To raise it, the pirate who enters here must be able to see it at first sight. Yes, Your Majesty. The Murloc soldiers below immediately took their orders. At the same time, Murloc Street was very lively. Quote. It's called the Sun Pirates. We are the pirates of the sun under the black flag. Quote. The flag, the background is a black flag, and the sun is in the middle, symbolizing our identity. The fish people discussed fiercely. Fisher Tiger embraced his arms and looked excited. It is the captain, who inspired the dream in my heart. It also gave us the qualifications to join the Black Flag Pirates. Since we choose to be independent, we must not let him down in the future. We have to do something big. He has firm eyes and hope in his heart. When will we leave, Tiger? The highest point of the Fishmen Island, the most conspicuous place, the black flag hunting and shaking, fluttering in the wind like a deep black light. Shop. At the same time, when the pirates who were staying in the Fishmen Island saw the pure black flag, their pupils contracted and the pressure in their hearts increased. Soon, build the ship and we will begin our voyage. The black flag has risen. At this moment, at the entrance of Murloc Street, someone suddenly yelled. One of their fellow crew members is probably stronger than me. Fisher Tiger listened to the words in his ear, his mouth curled up and smiled. As a low-level pirate, no one dares to make trouble under this banner. We, who only have 100 million Baileys, should keep a low profile. Don't make trouble here. The Fishmen Island, the black flag actually hung up. This is really a big event. It is conceivable that the Fishmen Island will have a huge change. Neptune is also making every effort to change the Fishmen Island. Thank you for reading this story at hotmtnovel.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Here, is it the territory of the black flag? Behind him, his companion couldn't wait to ask. On the highest point, the most conspicuous position of the Fishmen Island, no matter where you stand, you can see that flag. The invisible sense of oppression, good no, that represents the banner of the 3.8 billion men's pirates offering a bounty. Fisher Tiger took a deep breath and said loudly, Chapter 104. Advertise here. 1 day later, Naval Headquarters. The Black Flag Group appeared in the Fishmen Island. Has the black flag been raised in the Fishmen Island? The message from the phone worm made Kong's eyes solemn and serious. The weight of this newly emerging dark horse pirate group is already increasing in his mind. Almost every few days, it is a new height. Not long ago, just defeated the Kaido pirates. Only a few days later, good guy, even the Fishmen Island was included in his pocket. At this speed, it is impossible to imagine how high this pirate group will reach in 1 or 2 years. Moreover, the opponent is different from Roger. It's completely developing towards the overlord of one party. The pirate fleet, the territory of power, how big is this guy's ambition? Faintly, the development of the black flag reminded Kong of the overlord who had just sunk into the sea. Is it the same as Rock's? No, maybe he is even more threatening than Rock's. His eyes were solemn, and his brows frowned. Facing such a pirate group, he really didn't know what to do for a while. Similar to him, today's Shiki is probably inferior. According to the current intelligence, Shiki may have many people underneath, but compared with Jangl Liú, it appears to be somewhat incapable. This is the biggest difference between the two. Clenched his fists and knocked hard on the table. Jangl Liú, he has become the biggest hidden danger and threat of this age. But, how should Marine restrain him at the moment? His eyes flickered, empty in thought. Garp is currently chasing Roger's team in the second half of the Grand Line, and a large number of Vice Admiral class combat power is also in the second half of the division. Today, the naval headquarters are Sengoku, Zephyr, and a group of potential seeds who have just graduated from Marine Academy. According to the travel route of the Black Flag Group, it is obvious that their next step is an island in the first half of the Grand Line. However, with the current strength of the headquarters, it seems insufficient to respond to them. Kong frowned. After a long while, his eyes sharpened. The most important thing at the moment is to first determine where they are. It's too risky to let such a dangerous group of guys wander around the world. The successive news from the Haichi gang clearly made Sora even more solemn and fearful. Jangl Liú, the two top combat powers of Letterfield, plus the growing crew of Waldo, this pirate group has gradually matured. On the other side, on the 4th day after leaving the Fishmen Island, the pirate boat of Jangl Liú docked on the coast of Sabaody archipelago. It's very close to the city of Seven Waters. Looking up at the bubbles in the sky, Jangl Liú smiled. This is also a new and wonderful island. Each bubble floated to the highest point, glowing with colorful light, and then broke with a snap. The whole island presents a romantic scene like a fairy tale. All get off the boat, stay here for 1 night, and then head to the city of Seven Waters. Remember, keep a low profile. A place not far from here is naval headquarters. If we are noticed by them, we will have a lot of trouble. Listening to what Jangl Liú said, the people on the boat became nervous. This is what the captain said, but I always feel that he can definitely cause trouble. Leonard murmured. To tell you, I feel the same way. Arlong nodded behind him. Hody Jones blinked. You say this behind your back, aren't you afraid that the captain will clean you up? Hey, on this ship, the most feared person is the captain. Leonard laughed. He jumped off the boat, followed by the taciturn middle-aged swordsman. This kid also brings a bodyguard. Arlong envied. Horty Jones pressed Arlong's head. Go, see the human world. They all changed into black robes that could cover the whole body to avoid revealing their identities. The Murloc identity is still too eye-catching in the human world, especially the Sabaody archipelago at the end of the first half. There are sometimes celestial dragons here, so if you want to avoid trouble, try your best to keep a low profile. Waldo said in a deep voice. I stay on the boat and don't go anywhere. Letterfield waved his hand and said. Then trouble you, Laidfeld, if you watch the boat, we can rest assured. Waldo smiled. Afterwards, a group of people quickly entered Sabaody archipelago. Letterfield lay on the boat and looked at Jangl Liú, who was gradually disappearing from the back, with a smile flashing in his eyes. This guy, there will definitely be a big deal. Captain, you are not such a troublemaker. Guy Ram carried dumbbells in his hands and buzzed. He does say not to cause trouble every time, but when does it really happen? Laidfeld smiled. Guy Ram was stunned. Jangl Liú, who walked on the Sabaody archipelago, did not cover himself tightly or dressed up like other crew members. The black hair was simply erected, and he was dressed in a loose kimono with 2 knives slung around his waist, and his tall figure stood out from the crowd. He blended into the crowd and showed full interest in everything in the street. Not far behind, Tien Yushi followed closely, with a gentle smile on her face. But after a while, the two were side by side. This meatball is so delicious, you will try one soon. Jangl Liú turned around, stuffed the balls in his hands to the opponent, laughing. Thanks. Tianyushi smiled, lightly opened her red lips and bit the balls. Did they all disembark? Holding all kinds of food in his hand, Jangl Liú asked vaguely. Letterfield, Garam, Nakan, etc. stayed, and the others dispersed. Gentle Wei Wen Tianyu. Hey, then we too are a group, it seems that it has been a long time to be alone like this. Jangl Liú said, he put his arms around Tianyushi's waist. The latter blushed, but did not resist. On the Sabaody archipelago, Jangl Liú and the two went on their tour warmly, and everything seemed to be going on in harmony. The other crew members are scattered around, all hanging out happily. 3 hours later, Jangl Liú and Tianyushi came to a weapon shop. At the doorway, there are all kinds of knives. With a slight glance, he withdraws his eyes. From Jangl Liú's eyes, it is natural to see that these knives are unremarkable. After entering the store, he glanced around and shook his head slightly. There is no commendable good knife. In addition to the owner of the knife, a knife has very strict requirements on the material, the crafting technique, and the quality of the finished knife. Like Chushui, he was condensed into a black sword by Ryuma. And Chu Ling, in his hands, is also evolving rapidly, not far from the black knife. The two walked out of the weapon shop and continued to wander, but did not notice. A gaze in the crowd looked at them, and then quickly retracted and bowed their heads. Headquarters, urgently communicate, urgently communicate. Sabaody Archipelago, found the captain of the Black Flag Pirates, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. Repeat, urgently, and found the captain of the Black Flag Pirate Group, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. Sweat on his forehead, the man wrapped in his coat and hat, whispered, hurriedly and nervously, and said quickly to the phone worm in his arms. At the same time, on the other side of the alley, a young man with glasses stepped out, supported his frame with his right hand, then put it down, holding the white knife handle on his waist. I found you. Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. Chapter 105. Advertise here. When the young man with spectacles held his right hand on the handle of the knife, a wisp of powerful breath came out quietly. But soon, he released the handle of the knife, narrowed his eyes, and followed where Jangl Liú was. In the world, all well-known swordsmen are moved because of you. I'm really proud of it. Muttered, a smile appeared on the corner of the man with glasses. For this man, he set off from East Blue and came to Sabaody Archipelago. He was going to continue across the ocean to the second half of the Grand Line. Unexpectedly, seeing each other here, which I have to say is an unexpected surprise. Wandering around the streets unscrupulously, the person who found you was not just me. Character, is he an arrogant, unrestrained guy? His eyes fluttered slightly, and the man with glasses had already noticed that the surrounding of the other person was following Ruo Yorao's figure. Being named the world's #1 swordsman by Marine is destined to have endless troubles. Now this situation is just ordinary. Not far away, on a crowded street, Jangl Liú still hugged Tianyushi's waist, smiling on his face, and continued to stroll first. He didn't seem to notice anything wrong with the surrounding atmosphere, a relaxed expression and posture. But when passing by Sundry's vendor, the tall man behind him with a few scars on his face suddenly became hideous, and the long knife around his waist was instantly unsheathed. Aikiliu Kendo, Shimura Shin pays respects and comes to ask the world's #1 swordsman. The sound was very loud, accompanied by the light of the knife, slashing towards Jangl Liú's back. The middle-aged man with glasses looked at this scene and helped his glasses, revealing a look of contempt. Attacking from behind is undoubtedly a despicable act. The ambition of pursuing fame will undoubtedly make people become impetuous, become unclear about the situation at hand, and become despicable. Such a guy has obviously not yet reached home in his practice. Huh, the wind of the knife was bitter, and Jangl Liú still had a smile on his face. He slowly turned around, his face just facing the cutting edge of the knife. Hey, grinning lightly, Jangl Liú's eyes met the attacking swordsman. The latter's body stiffened, and the long sword in his hand stopped an inch from the center of the opponent's eyebrows, and could no longer advance. When he looked down, it was only because the other party's outstretched finger pressed against his chest. His complexion became horrified and terrified, and the man named Shimura Shin felt a little confused. One finger blocked his sword. It's okay to ask for advice. It will disturb my shopping, but it will come at a price. There was a faint voice. Jangl Liú raised his finger lightly, and in a blink of an eye he reached the center of Shimura's brow. Boom. With a light flick, in an instant, the latter turned into a cannonball and flew behind him, flying out 300 or 400 meters, hitting a big tree trunk, and sinking deeply into it. End. Hiss. The people who were standing next to Jangl Liú suddenly took a breath of air and quickly dispersed. The expressions of the swordsmen hiding in the surroundings changed even more. Only one finger. Does this guy really have the strength of the world's #1 swordsman? Shimura Shin has a dimensional gap with him. They were shocked in their hearts, and their faces were extremely solemn. Swordsmen from all over the world, or from other places in the dojo, are almost the same in travel time. Nowadays, many people are gathered on this island. When one person finds the target, others will naturally know it quickly. Jangl Liú wandered leisurely on the street, and was already discovered by swordsmen. Marine only noticed it later. Now, only a part of them come to him, and a large number of the remaining people are on the road. Jangl Liú. When Tianyu saw Jangl Liú make a move, he said softly in worry. When disembarking from the ship, the other party clearly stated that it is very dangerous because it is close to the marine headquarters, so don't get into trouble. But what happened to this sudden accident? I seem to be caught in an interesting but troublesome thing. Jangl Liú smiled slightly, not much nervous on his face. Let's go. Side by side, the two quickly left the noisy street and came to an alley. After a while, a series of figures holding a knife walked in, looking serious, staring at him. Is it here for the imaginary name of the world's #1 swordsman? Jangl Liú turned around, shielded Tian Yushi behind him, looked at the incoming person, and smiled softly. Is it called a fame because we got it? But those of us swordsmen who are pursuing fame, in our life, we pursue a fame that seems to be worthless in your eyes. The middle-aged man with a red scarf tied to his head and 2 knives slung around his waist said in a deep voice. While talking, he pulled out the long knife around his waist, leaned down and looked at Jangl Liú with solemn eyes. Ask for flowers. If there were no other people blocking the entrance of the lane, there would be no more than 13 people in a neat formation. That's what you said, but no way, Marine likes to give me such a reputation. You say you are angry. Jangl Liú grinned. The swordsman in the scarlet scarves, expressionless, he opened his mouth and said, 2 swords. But at this moment, he was directly interrupted by Jangl Liú. The battle will end soon, and I am not interested in remembering the names of passers-by. He took a step forward, looking at everyone in front of him. You guys, let's go together, one by one, it's a waste of time. There is anger in everyone's eyes, and such words are undoubtedly humiliating them. The man in the scarlet red scarf couldn't stand it anymore, and ran with his feet suddenly, and he came to Jangl Liú in the blink of an eye. Second swordsmanship, given by hunting tigers. The light of the knife was shining, reflecting the face of Jangl Liú. The distance between the two sides was only 50 centimeters in an instant, and the strong wind swept up with the long knife even blew Jangl Liú's black hair. At this moment, Chuling choked out of her waist. The knife that was faster than a blink of an eye, like a light, passed away in a flash. Jangl Liú grinned and stepped forward. To save my time. The voice came from behind. Jangl Liú paused, narrowed his eyes, and slowly turned around. Let's go together. My name is Koshiro, the world's largest swordsman, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. None of the Janao who came to challenge could stand up. When Jangl Liú and Tianyu walked out, there was a messy scene behind them. Strong knife, no mercy. What a domineering guy. A man with glasses, plain, with a white long knife slung around his waist, caught his eye, and with a flick of the long knife, he carried it on his shoulders, and the man with a red hood fell to the ground behind him, and a pool of blood appeared under him. Everyone's pupils shrank, and there was a touch of shock and panic in their faces. Thank you for reading this story at hotmtnovel.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Jangl Liú didn't know when to draw his sword, when he swung his sword, when he crossed over with the other party, and stood behind him. In the alleyway, there was a low growl, followed by a frantic footsteps, and then the light of the knife flickered, and the sound of thumping to the ground continued. Also, to mention your courage that was scared away by me. Chapter 106. Advertise here. Call. The wind blew gently, and the faint smell of blood floated in the alley, making the noses of people not far from here turbulent, revealing a confused expression. Jangl Liú slowly turned around and stared at the man with glasses. He is tall and burly physique. At first glance, he is more than a meter taller than the opponent. Koshiro is not a low individual, he is also 1.8 meters tall. Koshiro. As he read it softly, a smile appeared in Jangl Liú's eyes. Interesting. This man with a knife and glasses is impressively Koshiro from Ishin Dojo in Shimotsuki village in the original plot, and he is also the master of Zoro. The long knife in his hand is white all over, and it is obviously the word Hidao. Are you here to challenge me too? He stared at each other and said lightly. The randomness in the words and the faint smile on the face mean that he did not put the young man in front of him in his eyes. Proud, confident and domineering. These three words flashed through Koshiro's heart, but he was not angry, he just pursed his lips and smiled. I really want to see how far you are from yours. After that, Koshiro's eyes drooped slightly, and he glanced at the chushui that Jangl Liú was carrying around his waist. He recognized this sword, Wanokuni's national treasure, the famous sword chushui. At the same time, he confirmed the identity of the other party in his heart. Is it here? Jangl Liú grinned. Of course not. There are too many idlers here and they will interfere with us. Koshiro shook his head. Then choose a quiet place, I will fulfill your wish. Jangl Liú said. Standing on the side when Tianyu, she watched Koshiro quietly, and felt a familiar breath from the other person's body. Jangl Liú, this person is somewhat the same as the aura on your body. Koshiro was walking ahead, Tien Yushi whispered. This guy may be a fellow with me. Jangl Liú squinted and smiled. Really? No wonder, I think you are a bit similar in some respects. Strange way when Tianyu. The wind was blowing slightly, and the three of them quickly left the alley as they drifted away. A group of people came here immediately. When the probe entered the tunnel, everyone froze there, with fine beads of sweat oozing from their foreheads. They are all famous swordsmen. All defeated by that guy. With such a heavy hand, is this the world's top pirate? What a cruel guy. Swallowing saliva, this team is extremely nervous. Report to Colonel, the other party is not something we can deal with. Tightening their coats and hats, the team quickly turned around. On the street, Koshiro unknowingly stood on the same level as Jangl Liú, and the two walked side by side. There are many swordsmen and swordsmen who go to sea for you. These people may not agree with you to gain such a reputation, perhaps because of their own ambitions, or they may just want to know their own abilities. It's hard to describe all the reasons. But what is certain is, Your Excellency Jangl Liú, you will be in big trouble soon. After a pause, a flash of light flashed on Koshiro's glasses. The light of the world's #1 swordsman is not so easy to bear. If you don't have enough strength, you will only be crushed by the heavy crown. Jangl Liú grinned and said, Then, Koshiro, what are you going to sea for? When asked why, Koshiro's face showed a touch of nostalgia, and he smiled softly. To be honest, I don't want to leave that quiet mountain village. I thought about opening a dojo, quietly teaching students kendo, and spending the rest of my life peacefully. I am a person who has no ambitions for life or the future. As he said, his gaze looked at Jangl Liú, which contained complex meaning, curiosity, expectation and a touch of wonder. Your Excellency is from Wanokuni. Finally, Koshiro asked. Good. Jangl Liú nodded. As far as I know, there are closed doors, people in them can't go out. Koshiro paused and asked in a deep voice. A country can't lock people's dreams, can it? One day, I will be back there too, and I will start the country. Jangl Liú said lightly, but Koshiro next to him was shocked. Found a country. Changing the destiny of the entire country with one's own power is not something ordinary people can do. But if the person in front of you really has the world's first power. Maybe, it really can. Your Excellency bears Shimotsuki's glory, but he can go abroad resolutely. I admire his courage. Koshiro sighed softly. You know Wanokuni well. Jangl Liú has a deep meaning in his eyes. Hee. Koshiro smiled slightly and shook his head. They stepped forward again. The two of them chatted in a steady tone, without the slightest smell of gunpowder, and it was not like someone who would draw a knife and show off in the next second. It's more like a friend you haven't seen for a long time, and it looks kind and natural. Gradually, Jangl Liú learned that a large number of swordsmen have gathered on this island, and those who have studied kendo come from different sea areas and different genres. 4. It is also the reputation of the world's top swordsman. At this moment, these people have got their own news and are gathering to search for him. There is no doubt that this is not good news. Once found by this group of swordsman troops, he will face huge troubles. Perhaps he is not afraid of a small number of people, but if a large number of swordsmen gather together, the situation will become complicated. Especially, here is Sabaody archipelago, which is very close to Marine. If you can go, let's go. Among them, a few of them are of decent strength, but many of them are half-hearted. You are not a bloodthirsty person, facing these guys, it will be very troublesome. Koshiro made his own suggestion. Jangl Liú nodded, agreeing in his heart. In the face of a few people who come to the door, he can cope with it, but he will be impatient if it is large scale. Or, killing chickens and monkeys is also fine. His eyes flickered, Jangl Liú was thinking about countermeasures. Soon, the three of them came to a quiet woods, colorful bubbles rose slowly, and the river was flowing not far away. It's here, Koshiro said softly, standing still. Jangl Liú narrowed his eyes, holding the Chu Ling knife in his waist with his right hand. Then, come on. In the face of a guy like you, I will go all out, even if I haven't fought yet, but the instinct from the swordsman is telling me. Koshiro said slowly, his eyes becoming extremely solemn. You are extremely dangerous. In the next second, Hidao's words flashed with white light and suddenly came out of her sheath. Chapter 107. Advertise here. An excellent swordsman, when the sword is sheathed, will converge all the sharp edges, making people feel unremarkable, but the moment when the long sword is unsheathed, all the accumulated sword power and sharp edge will burst out in an instant, turning into an incomparably shining light. Koshiro, this moment is that light. His footsteps are ringing, and his breath is getting stronger and stronger. Jangl Liú's eyes became sharpened by this force of air, and he wouldn't underestimate the young man in front of him. In the original work, it was mentioned that the opponent's sword training base had already reached the state of cutting off if you wanted to cut off, and not cutting off if you wanted to cut off. There is no doubt that the opponent is a great swordsman. Choke. Chu Ling unsheathed his waist and pulled out a brilliant arc. Jangl Liú's figure leaned forward in a flash, and his feet ejected out in the next second, turning into a strong wind. Silently, the figures of the two were approaching, and the long knives in their hands shone out like electric lights and collided fiercely. When the 18th crisp golden and iron sound came out, and the impact of the strong crack spread out to the surroundings. Such power. Koshiro's pupils contracted, and he pressed the knife with one hand, and the veins on his arm burst. He felt the force of horror coming out clearly, and the knife was like a mountain, and it could not be shaken. In the heart of every swordsman, there should be a tireless determination to be stronger. This is the instinct of a swordsman. Jangl Liú spoke softly. He held the knife in one hand, and the veins on his arm were also violent, showing a strong sense of strength. I respect your instinct, Koshiro. Even though you are a person, I like it very much. But, in this battle, I won't release water. Koshiro, who was close at hand, grinned after he was slightly startled. Then I am very grateful to you. If you despise it, it will be a shame to me. Ha 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 ha. Jangl Liú laughed. The long knife was swung out again with the strength of the words of Hidao. With a huge shock, Koshiro was swiped out, dragging a long trace on the ground, his eyes filled with solemnity and shock. Such fierce strength, is it really a human being? He felt the monster-like power of the opponent, and was shocked, and finally understood that this man would be regarded by Marine as the world's #1 swordsman. Just such a physical quality is not something mortal can achieve. Take it, Koshiro. A loud roar came. Jangl Liú jumped up in a few steps, and while he was up and down, the long knife struck him again. Koshiro twisted his body and jumped up. With the help of the twisted waist, he slammed down again. When there was a turbulent halo in the air, but Jangl Liú's long knife did not move. What? Between grinning, Jangl Liú's hand Chu Ling slammed again. The violent force poured out, and Koshiro was directly rushed into the air by this powerful force, and flew towards the big tree not far away. In the battle of strength, I am defeated. No, to be precise, it's vulnerable. Koshiro realized the result and was shocked. Monster. How much time and energy does it take to exercise to such a level? Judging by the age of the other party, it is simply impossible. Is it natural power? With the help of this force, Koshiro flew out, slammed his feet on the tree, leaving deep footprints, and then shot out again. Go all out. Where is the gap with the world's top class? Soon, I will be able to see clearly. There was a burst of light in his eyes, and Koshiro's breath rose to its strongest at this moment. On top of the words of Hidao, an inexplicable breath was entangled, and Sakura's flower-like air flow enveloped the entire blade in the blink of an eye. Hunting in the wind, blowing Koshiro's black hair, a dazzling ray of light condensed on his glasses, this moment of him is the most shining moment in his life. It seems that I have never had such a fighting spirit. But seeing him, the blood in my heart is accelerating, and I feel the blood boiling. It turns out that when my heart is not at peace, I also have ambitions around the corner. The words in his mind flowed quickly, and Koshiro's body rose to vacate a burning fighting spirit. Yes, after facing Jangl Liú, facing that monster-like power, he burned. Call out. Koshiro turned into a light in the wind. With this momentum, even Jangl Liú became solemn and serious. His long sword moved slowly, leaving a trail in the void, posing in a strange posture. The blade shook, and purple sakura flowers bloomed around the blade. The next moment, Koshiro arrived, the long knife was flattened, hidden, and then it burst into incomparable light and swung it. Jangl Liú also swung the knife, flames burned in his eyes, and a dark shadow with bloody eyes appeared behind him. One sword style, the first song in the autumn sun. Ghost. The knives collided together, shining brilliantly, and the two people passed by, standing back to each other. The void trembled, and the sharp slashes spread out. On the surrounding trees, oblique traces appeared, but they did not collapse. Knife. Too fast. The tree didn't even react. Koshiro's expression was somewhat distorted, and the war intent in his heart was even more surging. Thank you for reading this story at hotmtnovel.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Good. The knife seemed to be equally divided, but when he lowered his head, he saw his chest and his clothes were cut open. He gritted his teeth and said, Koshiro gripped the Kazuichi word tightly, emission hockey wrapped the long knife, and the aura on his body was stronger than before. With two knives, he might accidentally kill the man in front of him. The wind blew gently, fluttering his torn skirt. The next second, he suddenly turned around, swung his long knife, and burst out with the strongest power. The sky is very blue, white clouds are floating, and the breeze is blowing in, and it is very comfortable. Then force you to get a knife. Please show me the gap with the number 1 in the world, Mr. Jiāng Liú. What a shame for the swordsman. Is it just good? You don't even have the power to force you to use another knife. The other hand dropped to his waist and touched the handle of Chushui's knife, but in the end, it was released again. Jiāng Liú exclaimed, with a chuckle on his face. Koshiro looked up to the sky and said slowly. Koshiro suddenly calmed down. The opponent's control over strength and swordsmanship has reached an unimaginable level. In such a fleeting duel, they can all be controlled without hurting others. Jiāng Liú felt the other party's emotions, and his face was slightly serious. Chapter 108. Advertise here. Wow, this is the sound of a long knife cutting through the void, the wind is blowing, and the space is shaking. The blade wrapped by emission hockey exudes terrible power. Koshiro's body twists and turns rapidly in the air like a spinning top parallel to the ground. In an instant, the most powerful force burst out. Jiāng Liú held a single knife and looked at each other solemnly, waving the long knife continuously. Dang 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 dang. A series of collision sounds came out, the golden electric flowers flickered endlessly, and the aftermath of the slash quickly caused cracks on the ground. Aha! With a loud roar, Koshiro tried his best, and after continuous attacks, his feet fell in the air, and he waved towards the opponent again. Boom! The impact was low and Jiāng Liú stood there, as insurmountable as a mountain. Whirring. Koshiro gasped, his eyes solemn and high. He has been practicing swordsmanship since he was a child, and he has felt that he has a good talent. He has mastered each kendo skill, his realm is rapidly improving, and he understands the principle of cutting and cutting continuously. But today, at this moment, he encountered a mountain-like existence, powerful as a monster. Swing with full force, but not hurt the opponent. I can be stronger. With a gritted teeth, Koshiro raised his other hand and held the Kazuichi text with both hands. Holding the knife with both hands represents the superposition of power, and the force of the swing will be stronger, but at the same time, it will also lose the flexibility of the duel. In the next second, he leapt forward, waving his hands and slashing out. Combine. The light of the knife was shining and it drew an arc, but it was still firmly blocked in the air by that knife, and it didn't make any progress. Jing-do. The long knife turned into a phantom, enveloping the void in front of Jiāng Liú, the ground cracked, and the wind rushed out instantly. Jiāng Liú squinted and lifted the knife. Autumn equinox sweeps the fallen leaves. Every phantom of the knife was accurately picked up by him. Koshiro attacked again and again, and the latter also swung his knife, perfectly defending his attack. After a while, Jiāng Liú raised the knife, jumped up, swooped down from the sky, and swung out the long knife. Offensive and defensive changed positions at this moment. One sword flow. Teacher. Like a beast pounced, showing its fangs, the violent attack changed the pressure in the air. Koshiro looked solemn and raised his knife to resist. Boom. This knife hit his knife, and the face under his feet was shocked, and the soil rolled upside down. A stream of heat gushes from the throat, making him unable to bear it, and blood is flowing from the corner of his mouth. The two long knives fought in the void and collided with sparks. Soon, Jiāng Liú's knife was raised again, and then struck again. Duo, teach me. Boom. With another heavy blow, Koshiro's body shook violently, spurting out a large mouth of blood, and flew out backwards. After falling to the ground, he looked down at the word Hidao in his hand, showing a lost look. Lost. Such a complete defeat. The opponent crushed himself on all sides, and he couldn't even force another knife. This is a qualitative gap above strength. Perhaps, a quiet life is more suitable for me. With a soft sigh in his heart, Koshiro calmed down. Then the footsteps sounded, Jiāng Liú came to him and stretched out his big hand. Good job, Koshiro. With a grin, Jiāng Liú's eyes showed sincerity. Slightly startled, Koshiro stretched out his hand, held the opponent, and then stood up vigorously. Thank you Jiāng Liú, for this opportunity. Shaking his head, he gave another wry smile. Sure enough, I'm still far behind. Jiāng Liú laughed loudly. No, Koshiro, you made a mistake. In your sword, you just lack the intent to fight. Of course, there is also the reason why I am too strong. As he said, he showed sharp eyes. I'm an invincible samurai who beat Wanokuni. How could I lose to you? Koshiro was shocked and stared at the opponent. He knows very well what kind of country Wanokuni is, with samurai everywhere, and there are countless kendo halls. The strength of this country is top-notch even if you look at the whole world. The other party has beaten Wanokuni all over and won the title of invincibility. No wonder such a man can't beat him. However, I am very satisfied with this battle with you. You are also a very strong guy. Jiāng Liú laughed. Koshiro was in a better mood after receiving recognition from the other party. I will continue to practice hard, and I will be far from the top in the world. Speaking softly, Koshiro's eyes were firm. How about, do you want to sail with me? Koshiro, there is still a shortage of people on my boat. Jiāng Liú issued an invitation. My kendo is still more suitable for a quiet environment. Today's hometown is also very beautiful. Koshiro smiled politely and refused. That's a shame. Jangl Liú shook his head. He wanted to say something more, but at this moment, his eyes condensed slightly, and Koshiro turned his head and looked to the side with a helpless expression. I originally wanted to communicate with His Excellency Jangl Liú, but it seems that it is not suitable. Quote. You were right, these guys are really looking at me. Quote. Jangl Liú nodded and said. As I could see, black spots appeared quickly, and then they rushed towards here. The world's largest swordsman, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, accept my challenge. Why do you get such a reputation, the world's largest swordsman? It should be me. Whoever catches up with him first has the qualifications to challenge him. Don't fight with lousy. The yelling came soon, and the noisy voice made Jangl Liú three people feel scalp numb. It's really troublesome. Eyes sharpened, Jangl Liú stepped out, putting his right hand on his waist. The sword hero challenger of the brigade quickly approached, and in the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of him. Jangl Liú, you don't want to fight these guys, do you? Koshiro said in surprise. Sweeping away, there were 300 to 400 people in the densely packed team of swordsmen. Of course not. I've never liked to cause trouble. Jangl Liú stepped, drew his sword, and smiled softly. After 3 steps, his eyes glared, and the violent domineering aura burst out in an instant. The Janao team who was chasing him suddenly stagnated, and the figures and eyes were white, and they fell to the ground with a soft puff, and a piece of it fell horizontally and vertically. The only people left, their eyes widened, were extremely shocked. At this time, Jangl Liú, standing in front, carried a long knife on his shoulders, and uttered words that shook the hearts of each of them. Want to challenge me? I give you a chance. Get all over, let's go together. Angrily stared, Jangl Liú's body was full of breath. Lousy wants it today. Kill the chicken and the monkey. Koshiro's eyes widened, looking at the only a dozen people left in front of him, as well as hundreds of others lying on the ground unconsciously. His heart swayed, shocked and speechless. Where is this to kill chickens and monkeys? Obviously it's all solved. The shop. Chapter 109. Advertise here. It's Conqueror's Hockey. This guy is really hard to deal with. Too arrogant, let him know how good we are. The remaining 10 or so swordsmen, while their hearts were slightly stunned, were also furious. Jangl Liú's posture clearly did not put them in their eyes. Only those who are standing are qualified to challenge you. What an arrogant, domineering guy. The voice came out, and more than a dozen swordsmen held long swords in their hands. In the next second, armament hockey swept across the blade, and his breath changed drastically. Then he ran with his legs and attacked in different directions and trajectories towards Jangl Liú. My feet, my neck, my legs, my belly. In a moment, the dozen or so sword lords had already discussed the direction of their attack, and the speed suddenly accelerated. A few decent ones are here. Jangl Liú laughed and rushed out. With a pair of more than a dozen swordsmen, his momentum at this moment is like 1,000 horses galloping with a long knife in his hand, burning the light like a soccer a flower. But you guys, it's obviously still not enough. The body shape suddenly turned, the long knife swung out, a whirlwind swept up, and in the next second, Jangl Liú rushed into the crowd. One sword flow, haunted wind. Suddenly, 2 blood-colored pupils appeared in the void behind him, and the whirlwind grew rapidly and turned into a tornado. This is. The sword lords opened their eyes wide, and their hearts were shocked. This breath made their whole bodies stiff. Roar. A fierce roar sounded, the tornado swept out, and more than a dozen swordsmen were wrapped in it in an instant, and then suddenly erupted. The screams sounded, the tornado expanded rapidly, and more than a dozen figures flew out in the next moment, fell heavily to the ground, and could no longer get up. Just a trick. He is too strong. Is this the strength of the world's #1 swordsman? My ambition, in front of his strength, is completely unbearable. Gritting their teeth, the sword lords were desperate and unwilling, and slowly closed their eyes. Jangl Liú touched the ground gently and inserted the long knife into the sheath. Let's go. Looking back at Koshiro and Tianyushi with a smile, Jangl Liú stepped away from here. We can continue talking, before the next batch of challengers arrive. Jangl Liú smiled slightly. Koshiro was stunned, looking at the smile on the other's face, his mood also relaxed. What an open-minded, optimistic and domineering guy. He is also a person who is admirable and can't hate him. The two of them walked and talked, the atmosphere seemed very harmonious, and the bubbles floated up gently, breaking apart with a snap. The colorful light is falling down, and everything looks so beautiful. Gradually, Jangl Liú learned that Koshiro was indeed related to Kozaburo from the Shimotsuki clan, but the other party was unclear and did not reveal too much. On the issue of swordsmanship, Koshiro was also very modest to ask Jangl Liú, who knew everything, and his profound insights into swordsmanship made Koshiro admire. Not far from them, a group of people followed far away, hiding behind the big tree. Yes, the target is in the 42nd block. The challengers just now have all been defeated. Our people are mixed in. The other party didn't kill him, but was seriously injured and needed emergency rescue. Well, we will continue to track the target and wait for instructions from the headquarters. After a brief speech, the leader pressed the brim of Marine's hat, bowed his head, and followed closely. The danger of Jangl Liú is beyond doubt. Even the Sabaody archipelago garrison near the naval headquarters did not dare to act rashly after spotting the enemy. Once a riot is caused, it will be devastating to this island. Naval headquarters, in the Marshal's office. It's a headache, this group of dangerous guys arrived at Sabaody archipelago without knowing it. There is a concentrated area of celestial dragons. Once something happens, the consequences will be disastrous. Kong gritted his teeth, with bloodshot eyes, feeling very angry recently. After frowning slightly, he decisively gave the order. Zephyr, you go to Sabaody archipelago immediately, but don't act rashly. Jangl Liú is now surrounded by swordsman challengers from all over the world. We have found him, but it is not a wise behavior to friction with him. Be ready for battle at any time, once these people leave Hong Kong. Start war immediately. Having said this, Kong's eyes condensed, and his aura was fierce. We must do everything we can to eliminate this group of guys with great potential before they have reached the peak. Zephyr, who had been silent next to him, stood up after hearing the words. I understand. Then he turned and left. Take Kuzan, Porosalino, and Sakazuki. They are all your students, now they just graduated, and it's time to sharpen them. Sora suddenly said again. It is good. Zephyr nodded and left quickly. Sabaody archipelago, the port, in a quiet forest. It's not wrong. This is the ship of the Black Flag Group. Although they lowered the flag, they can still be identified. The guy with braids and sleeping on the bow of the ship is the big pirate with a bounty of 3.5 billion Baileys, Letterfield. The guy behind is Guy Ram. They are all extremely dangerous guys. There was a low, nervous voice, and Major Marine retracted the telescope and took a deep breath. The headquarters let us keep a close eye on their movements and don't act rashly. But such a guy, how can we dare to do it if we want to do it? Muttered, the Major felt a little soft. Such a group of pirates, let them just observe from a distance, it feels like they have been drained. At the same time, in the 31 district streets. Arlong, wait. Hody Jones, who hid himself under the black robe, suddenly grabbed Arlong who was walking in front, and said in a deep voice. What's the matter, brother Hody Jones? Arlong asked strangely, pushing the apple in his hand into his coat and snapping a bite. In front of them, Leonard and his bodyguard, they are happily buying the specialties here, Leonard to be precise. If he is happy, Leonard will throw a few things over, so that the two of them will also be touched. Look there. Hody Jones raised his hand and pointed to the side. Arlong looked along, his pupils contracted and his body immediately froze there. Hey, you two guys, come on. Why is it so slow? Leonard, who was walking in front, turned around dissatisfied, but when he saw the state of the two and followed their sights, his body was also shocked. When the reaction came over, Leonard hurried to the two of them. You two guys, don't be impulsive. There are only 3 of us trainee crew members. If we are impulsive, we will all be finished. Hody Jones clenched his fists, Arlong smashed the apple in his hand, his expression grim and distorted. How can we endure things like this, Leonard? That, but our kind. On the street not far from them, a group of humans dressed in black were slowly advancing with a murloc with shackled hands and feet. Chapter 110. Advertise here. Wow. The sound of shackles collided with a crisp sound. The people around let go. It's a murloc. It's so fierce, is it going to the slave farm for auction? I heard that it was a pirate offering a reward 100 million gold. I know this guy, who is offering a reward of 100 million. The cadre of the Bardos pirates, Phylan, was arrested because he provokes the nobles, and their captain abandoned him just ran away. Although he looks very cruel, but also very pitiful. The onlookers discussed and let the middle way. Humans' attitude towards murlocs is still very strange, some are curious, and some are disgusted. The words in their ears made Hody Jones and Arlong even more angry, and clenched their fists. Leonard's eyes flickered, and he also clenched the knife around his waist. If you want to do it, you must be fast, and, the 3 of us, are you really sure to get rid of this group of guys? Speaking in a low voice, Leonard was also very angry. He has a good relationship with the fish people. Arlong and Arlong are both trainee crew members. The 3 have established a good relationship foundation. Seeing this scene, I can naturally understand the mood of these 2 people. Leonard, you don't have to come in. Hody Jones said solemnly, moving forward, already made up his mind. Arlong gritted his teeth, but at the same time he was very nervous. As a realizing crew member, his age and strength are the weakest among the crowd. His Royal Highness, the auction site of Sabaody Archipelago has a major bearing on the nobles of the world. You must consider it carefully. At this time, the swordsman's bodyguard, who had always been reticent, spoke up. Hody Jones turned around and looked at Leonard and the swordsman in surprise. He thought this guy was dumb, and Leonard was the prince of humans. I am already a pirate who can stand alone. What about the prince? I have long forgotten it. Also, Laozi is an old man who participated in the war with Kaido. After a pause, Leonard gritted his teeth. How can you leave the 2 newcomers behind with such a thing? Holding the hilt of the knife around his waist with his right hand, Leonard let out a low growl. Go ahead, Hody Jones, Arlong. How can you bear this kind of thing? The 2 Murloc trainee crew members were taken aback for a moment, and then glanced at each other, both nodding their heads. The 3 slowly approached, and the team escorting the Murlocs hadn't noticed any abnormalities. The Murloc in the middle, with a shark face, head down, his clothes torn, and many wounds, looked very tired. A feeling of loss, frustration, and despair spread out, and it was obvious that he was already very clear about his fate. Will be put on a collar that explodes when disobedient, and after a round of auctions, it will be sold to the nobles among the humans for pleasure and humiliation. A miserable life. In this human society, oneself is like an animal, for people to make fun and laugh at, just a tool. Thinking of the captain who abandoned himself, Phylan was even more disappointed. He was rescued by the other party and made a vow of life, but what was ushered in was betrayal and abandonment. Suddenly, Phylan stopped in his footsteps and raised his head abruptly. He felt the smell of the same kind. At the same time, Hody Jones yelled, "Do it!" The three people who were close to the team rushed over immediately. Hody Jones and Arlong were fierce, and knocked down the two guys with one punch. Leonard also attacked fiercely, slashed over, and the two fell. But at this time, everyone else in the team reacted and launched a counterattack one after another. With the sound of the gunshot, Hody Jones' body shook, and blood came out of his abdomen, but in the next second, he became more fierce and rushed directly to the opponent. In the fierce battle, both his and Arlong's clothes and hats fell off. It's a Murloc. Damn it, is this guy's accomplice? Catch him. Attention, don't kill. The panicked voice sounded, but soon, there were three more figures in the middle of the team. At the same time, the number of people in the black team was also reduced. All bet to the auction house and sell them together. The leading man pressed his dirty hat and said coldly. Hody Jones and Arlong were depressed and frustrated. I'm sorry, Leonard, I'm dragging you down. It's okay, we are brothers. Leonard grinned. Still think about how to escape next. Damn it, I really shouldn't listen to Arlong. Hody Jones gritted his teeth. Obviously it was your eldest brother who impulsively said that you would save this guy. Arlong's grievances. I still have a way. Leonard whispered. Fesslin raised his head and gratefully looked at the three daredevils. His heart was filled with inexplicable warmth. Thank you three for saving me, although I failed. It's all the same kind. Don't thank you. Everyone is a pirate, but also a Murloc. How can you bear this kind of thing? Hody Jones and Kaido. Are you also pirates? Phylan said in surprise. The two nodded, but thought that they were only trainee crew members, and they shut up again. Trainee crew, it seems a bit embarrassing to say it. You guys, be quiet. At this time, the people on the side of the team pointed their guns at them and shouted coldly. Several people fell silent, all bowing their heads. Leonard, don't you have a way? Hurry up, if you wait for the captain and them to come and rescue, it would be too shameful. Hody Jones gritted his teeth. It's easy. Leonard grinned, he took a deep breath, and then yelled to the sky. Lousy is Leonard of the Black Flag Pirates. Do you dare to catch me? My 30,000 brothers, I will never let you go. My captain, but a big pirate with a reward of 3.885 billion. You are so bold. This energetic, confident, and proud words spread all over the audience and calmed everyone down. The leading man in black changed his expression even more and suddenly turned his head. Black Flag. But soon, he reacted and sneered. How can there be a weak fellow like you in the Black Flag? Leonard was anxious and scolded again and again. When Lousy's brother comes, you will know what fear is. Damn bastard, dare to drag me to auction. Damn it, I'm still the prince of the left bank country. Amidst the roars, Leonard was dragged out. But among the crowd of onlookers, there were already people with solemn expressions on their faces. That guy, it's not bragging. I once saw the face of this kid in a corner of the newspapers covering the Haichi group. In other words, this guy is really Haichi. And this, it means that Haichi has really come here. At the same time, Marine, who was hiding in the dark, was also a nervous dial-up worm. Master Vice Admiral, Leonard, Hody Jones, and Arlong, the trainee crew of the Black Flag crew, were arrested by the people at the auction venue. Next, there may be big trouble. On the other side, in the 34th block not far from this block. Damn it, how come there are so many swordsmen? When Jangl was pulling Tianyu, he ran wildly and roared. Koshiro followed closely. As I said, there are many people who challenge you. Jangl roared again and again. This is too much. He was able to accept it at first, and he dealt with it easily, but with the arrival of batches of swordsmen, it was almost numb to his scalp, and he became impatient and began to avoid it. There are challengers almost everywhere, and he knows where he is. Where is the front? While running, Jangl asked while turning his head. It's coming to the 29th block soon. There, it seems to be. Koshiro contemplated and confirmed. It's an illegal place for human trafficking. Jangl shouted. Sabaody Archipelago. What a shabby place. And. Chapter 111. Advertise here. Sabaody Archipelago, Block 32. It seems that we can spend a relatively peaceful transit time. Waldo and others said with a smile. I haven't left here yet on the boat, Waldo, this kind of thing is not guaranteed. Bing Jack sighed. For now, Sabaody Archipelago hasn't had any problems, which is great. Waldo grinned. Wait, who is there? Suddenly, Cyrus behind them pointed to the intersection of the street in front of them in amazement. Everyone moved their eyes and looked at the full intersection ahead. I saw a figure, running wildly, with a tall woman behind her back, and a young swordsman with glasses behind her back. Damn it, don't chase lousy. There was a roar, and the words were extremely impatient. Do not go. The world's largest swordsman, I want to challenge you. You can't escape, face it bravely. The world's #1 crown, can you bear such a weight? Urgently, loud roars followed, and a large number of swordsmen with knives on their waists rushed and brought a large amount of dust between them, chasing the figure in front of them. Waldo and others were dumbfounded, relatively speechless. What's the matter? Listening to this voice, it seems that they are all swordsmen who have come to challenge the captain. Sure enough, this guy is still causing trouble. Everyone sighed one after another, with helpless expressions on their faces. Let's take a look, that amount is not normal. It's the captain after all. It doesn't seem to be great to just pretend not to see it. After they looked at each other, they all laughed. There is a saying, watching his captain being pursued in this way, I still have a very refreshing feeling in my heart. The world's #1 swordsman is dignified and chased all over the world. Ha 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 ha, it's so fun. Waldo, I'm sure you just want to see the captain's ugly look. Huh, Cyrus, you are not the same, this is a black material. Several people talked and laughed and walked forward. They were not in a hurry. With the strength of their captain, they would encounter no danger at all for a while. Damn it, how come these guys are chasing you? Asshole, do you all want to die? Dare to chase after me? Jangl Liú roared angrily, turning his head and threatening the people behind him again and again. Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, we are challenging you, please follow the rules of swordsmen. Fight us upright, the swordsman shouted, not knowing what fear is. Jangl Liú took a breath, turned his head and continued to run wildly. Before he knew it, he had rushed across 4 or 5 blocks, stepped across a small river, and looked at the huge building ahead. Auction floor. As his eyes condensed, Jangl Liú ran with strides. In this kind of place, you will not follow lousy too. A bunch of bastards. At the same time, warships approached at the port of Sabaody archipelago. A face with Chinese characters, a burly figure, and a body with a righteous cloak fluttering in the wind behind it stepped down from the wooden ladder under the bow of the ship. Report Jangl Liú's location. Really? Block 29, auction house. That's a very sensitive area. Hearing the voice of the phone bug, Zephyr's tone was heavy. Behind him, the 3 tall young men also squinted. Once something happens, even if we don't want to do anything here, I'm afraid we won't be able to control the situation. The conflict caused by such a big pirate will be unimaginable. Speaking in a deep voice, Zephyr's eyes sharpened. Order the garrison of Sabaody archipelago to be ready to support an attack at any time. Tell them, this will be a war. After a pause, he said in a deep voice. Notify Sengoku that the ambush and encirclement work in the nearby waters is ready. We must be 100% prepared to gain first-hand advantage and ultimate victory in the next war against Jangl Liú and the group. In the phone worm, a solemn and serious response soon came. Yes, Zephyr Admiral. Zephyr nodded, put away the phone worm, looked at the island, and there was an inexplicable light in his eyes. Let's go to the auction to have a look. Next, what kind of situation will be, no one knows. But it is predictable. After a pause, Zephyr's voice was solemn and ethereal. It will be the only scene in your life. Behind them, Kuzan, Pelusolino, and Sakazuki all changed their complexions slightly, and then grinned. I'm looking forward to it. Teacher, known as the #1 swordsman in the family, and in the headquarters, how dangerous is the enemy that Admiral treats seriously? How terrible is a man? Poor Solino said with a smile. Kuzan's eyes were slightly serious, and he didn't speak. I will catch him here. Sakazuki said in a deep voice, his eyes sharp. Zephyr turned around and glanced at the 3 of them, smiled lightly, and strode towards the island. The speed of the group was very fast and the goal was very clear. They went straight to the auction site in Block 29. At this moment, the auction is in progress. Dear guests, nobles, I believe that today's auction will definitely not let you down. The lot at the bottom of the box is a treasure that is rarely seen on weekdays. Before that, let's take a look at the underwater jewelry from all over the world. I heard that they are all taken from various mysterious pirate treasures. The host is wearing sunglasses and holding a microphone, with fine sweat oozing from his forehead, trying to make his words appear high and can drive the atmosphere of the scene. But the pressure in my heart is still there. In the first row of the stage, all the world's top nobles are sitting, especially the 3 serious, taciturn men on the right hand, all dressed in fine clothes and wearing bubbles on their heads. Celestial Dragons. This is a noble title that will make people tremble as long as they are heard. It represents the supreme nobility, the supreme right, and the supreme status. In the world, no one can go against the wishes of celestial dragons. But fortunately, as the auction went on, celestial dragons didn't say anything, but frowned from time to time, which put the host under great pressure. Soon, when the lot is going to the end, the host was shocked and shouted loudly, the next lot will never disappoint everyone. That is from under the deep sea, the Fishmen Island, the Fishmen in the kingdom of the Undersea Dragon Palace. This sentence really made the atmosphere of the audience warm up, and the eyes of the 3 celestial dragons lit up. Obviously, everyone is interested in murlocs. The next second, 3 murlocs were pushed up, and Leonard followed behind. 3 murlocs. A prince who claims to be from the human world will be put together for auction. When you photograph the ownership of the 3 murlocs, this prince from the human world will also be given to you as a free item. The host laughed loudly. In the audience, Celestial Dragons raised his hand and said proudly, "I'm out." On the stage, 3 murlocs gritted their teeth, humiliated in their hearts, bowed their heads and trembled all over. Leonard closed his eyes and prayed. "Big brothers and sisters on the boat, no matter who it is, come and save me. To die, to die, to die." At this moment, the door directly opposite was pushed open with a bang. Everyone was shocked and looked up in astonishment. A figure rushed in, with 2 long knives slung around his waist, and grinned after seeing the scene here. "Sorry to disturb everyone." But when the words came to this, after seeing the people on the high platform, his expression instantly sank, and an overbearing, terrifying and powerful aura rose up. "It seems that it's not an interruption. I came here just fine." Chapter 112. Advertise here. Outside the auction, the sun was shining, but the lights on the scene looked a little gloomy. The door suddenly opened, and the dazzling sunlight made countless people squint their eyes. The figure that suddenly broke in was shining with the sun at the moment behind it, with 2 long knives slung around his waist, and his tall and burly figure revealed an invisible breath and pressure. "I came here just right." The calm, but suppressed voice of words spread throughout the audience, and also made the people present a chuckle in their hearts and a bad premonition. No matter how you look at it, this man is not like a simple guy. After 3 steps, the man stepped into the auction, and the people in it were also used to the dazzling sun and saw the man's face clearly. A delicate, handsome, resolute face that can fascinate thousands of young girls, has a unique domineering, attractive charm to the opposite sex. Ship, captain. On the high stage of the auction house, Leonard was soaring, and his voice-changing tone melodiously sounded. Tears could not help but burst out almost instantly. Excitement, incredible emotions, expressions on that face, combined together, made Leonard look a little weird at the moment. In front of him, Horty Jones and Arlong suddenly raised their heads. When they saw the sun shining down and the sun shining behind them, they all trembled and became excited. 18. Faisleng's eyes narrowed, and he was stunned. "Is he your captain?" "Yes, Feslin, he is our captain." Horty Jones nodded his head. "Captain, it's our great savior. Saved. Oh." Arlong's tears flowed. "Even if it is your captain, the people present here are all big businessmen, big nobles, and even some from all over the world. Celestial dragons." Fei Silin took a deep breath and said solemnly. "What can he do in such a situation?" But Arlong, Horty Jones laughed. "You don't know the captain too much. You don't know Haichi, Faislund. Soon, you will know what kind of person he is." "Black Flag, what kind of pirate group is it?" Phylin's body trembled lightly and was silent. He once had extreme expectations for human captains, but all that was ushered in was betrayal and abandonment. "Yes, Feslin, you will soon know how great the captain is," Leonard said excitedly. After that, he yelled at the host in front of him. "Don't let Lousy go quickly, otherwise, your disaster is imminent." The host was stunned, completely unaware of where the bonus items for this auction came from. Of the 3 celestial dragons sitting under the right hand, one of them said with a cold expression, "What are you waiting for? Hasn't the auction started yet? I am very anxious. I will take these 3 lots back and show them to my friends." Hearing these indifferent, majestic words, the host trembled, and sweat leaked from his forehead. "Yes." Withdrawing his eyes, he took another deep breath while holding the microphone, ready to start. Under the auction hall, sitting in the back row of seats, a man with a grim face and a cross-shaped scar on his forehead suddenly grinned. "Unexpectedly, when you come to relax, you will see such a scene. The bounty is 3.885 billion, the world's largest swordsman, an unimaginable guy. I plan to leave. Just look at what a domineering man you are." The whispering was just over, and the wind suddenly started at the door. A powerful, overbearing aura suddenly swept the entire auction venue, making everyone present froze in their seats at this moment. The terrifying pressure made their hearts feel as if they were pressing on a mountain, and the sweat on their foreheads was quietly oozing out. What kind of pressure is this? The man with the cross-shaped scar was shocked and tried to lift his head, but couldn't. The entire auction venue fell into unspeakable silence at this moment. The sound of steady, slow footsteps echoed in everyone's heart, and their pressure was even greater with every foot landing. 10 steps later, someone couldn't support it and fell down. "Hey, Horty Jones, Arlong, Leonard." The overbearing voice sounded, and the target went straight to the 3 people who were locked in shackles on the stage. Jangl drew the long knife from his waist, his eyes widened, his breath was brutal like a beast. Hockey shot all over, crushing the entire auction venue with majesty. "Have you been bullied?" Leonard almost fainted with excitement and roared. The tears of Horty Jones and Arlong flowed wildly, and they couldn't help it anymore. Even in the past few decades, the 3 of them are still in their lives and cannot forget the heroic appearance of their captain at this moment. The golden sun is the cloak, embellishing the captain's body, the tall figure looks like a god, and the overbearing breath makes the world silent for a while. What a stalwart and heroic figure this is. The host froze on the high platform, completely speechless. He looked at the man gradually approaching here, opening his mouth to say something, but he felt only unspeakable fear. It's so bold. A deep voice sounded, and the words were full of coldness and anger. The next second, they saw the man swing a knife. The void rippled, and an arc-shaped slash smashed on the high platform of the auction house. Silently, a gust of wind blew past the host's face. Immediately afterwards, the high platform of the auction venue was split from the center to the backstage. Everything was divided into two, which caused several fearful exclamations. Jiāng Liú walked slowly to the high platform, glanced at the three of them, and then heaved a sigh of relief. Hey, who are you? Dare to be so rude. The three celestial dragons in the audience finally reacted, gritted their teeth and shouted. Under the bubble, they also have fear on their faces, but their natural status makes them still speak such words. Shut up. Jiāng Liú suddenly yelled, and the violent hockey rushed down. The three celestial dragons stood on the spot, their faces turned green by the breath, and their legs kept trembling. Jiāng Liú smiled, and then unbuttoned the collars of the other two, and finally helped Phylan to untie them in the same way. Leonard exclaimed. Crack. There was a puddle of marks under celestial dragons' feet, and one of them fainted with fright. Captain, this thing on our necks will explode. Thank you for reading this story at hotmtnovel.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. The captain is amazing. Arlong and Leonard closed their eyes vigorously. In the next second, he squeezed the collar around the opponent's neck and shook it suddenly. The entire auction venue was silent at this moment, and everyone was wide-eyed, looking shocked at the stalwart man carrying a long knife on the stage. Afterwards, he scanned the audience with both eyes, and no one dared to look at him. What an overbearing man. After taking a look, Jiāng Liú raised a hand and grinned. Don't worry, I can fix him. Hody Jones gritted his teeth. The scar-faced man, trembling all over, muttered to himself. One more sentence, Lousy will kill you. The collar broke, but it did not explode, which also surprised the two of them. Chapter 113. Advertise here. You three guys, really surprised me. Jiāng Liú grinned. Originally to avoid the swordsman who challenged him from behind, he did not expect to encounter three trainee crew members who were kidnapped for auction inadvertently. Excuse me, Captain. Hody Jones lowered his head and said, looking embarrassed. Ha ha. Jiāng Liú smiled and patted the other person on the shoulder. Partners, shouldn't they help each other? At this moment, I am here, are you very surprised? He said loudly. All three of them showed excitement, expressions of excitement, and nodded heavily. Let's go. Jiāng Liú jumped off the high platform. The auction floor was silent, and no one affected them. Those with poor willpower fainted even under the impact of his talent hockey. The three celestial dragons were stiff all over, with green on their faces, and the legs of their trousers showed signs of water stains to varying degrees. They were obviously scared to urinate. Phylan, let's go. After Arlong walked a few steps, he turned to see Phylan who was still in a daze and called out. Ah good. Phylan awakened like a dream, and quickly responded. He took a deep breath and stared at the tall man walking in the forefront, with double knives on his waist, a touch of awe in his eyes. Once abandoned by a human captain, he felt an absolutely different spirit in this man. The eyes that the other party glanced across him didn't mean any discrimination or anything else. Hurry up. Right here. The Celestial Dragon's auction site, this is not a simple place. Want to go in? At this moment, there were dense voices, and the atmosphere outside the auction room seemed a little nervous and hesitant. Even swordsmen from all over the world have to shrink back in front of celestial dragons. After all, they are not lawless criminals. Jiāng Liú stepped on the stairs and came to the door, looking at the densely packed sword lords in the open space in front of him, his head hurt again. You guys, it's really lingering. With eyes condensed, he said coldly. Hurry up and get off. I don't have time to talk to you now. Otherwise, Lousy will really be angry. With three trainee crew members behind him, he really needs to send these people back to the ship as soon as possible. And, if such a thing happens at auction, I'm afraid Marine will be coming soon. At the same time, the three celestial dragons sitting there, one in the middle, took a deep breath. With fear in his eyes, he lowered his head and looked at his already wet trouser legs, his eyes quickly filled with anger. Damn it, I'm so gullible. Raising his right hand, tremblingly took out the phone bug from his arms. Send me Admiral quickly, we were attacked. Damn it, Lousy is scared to pee. Roaring, celestial dragons snarled at the phone worm. After a while, the phone worm heard a low voice from the other side. We have arrived. Outside the auction venue, behind a group of swordsmen. Da 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 da. The sound of dense footsteps sounded quickly, followed by the hunting and shaking of the white skin, a large number of marines surging from all directions. The headed man, with purple hair, a sturdy body, and extraordinary momentum, was followed by three young school-level officers. Although their faces are immature, the aura of these three people is equally unusual. Marine is here. Hidden behind Tianyushi and Koshiro's eyes moved slightly, their expressions suddenly changed. That person is Marine Admiral Zephyr. Koshiro recognized Zephyr and said in a deep voice. It seems that Jiāng Liú caused a big deal in the auction venue. This is a lot of trouble. He raised his head, past the figures of the swordsmen, and looked at the auction venue, with a worried expression on his face. When Tianyu's figure moved, he was about to rush out, but Koshiro grabbed him. When you come to Jangl now, what you may have is a side effect. You can't help in the next battle, he said in a deep voice. Tianyu frowned, and finally stood still, paying attention to the situation on the battlefield. The entrance of the auction venue. Jangl glanced coldly around his eyes, frowning, aren't you going back? Then I'm welcome. When the voice fell, the long knife from his waist was suddenly pulled out. Jangl, we are waiting for this moment. Accept the challenge. Otherwise, no one will recognize your title as the world's #1 swordsman. Come to fight. The sword lords are also overbearing one after another, vying for strength. Kendo represents sharpness, fierceness, and indomitable progress. Anyone who has the ability to cultivate in Kendo will not have much fear. Jangl's eyes were gloomy, and his eyes glanced slightly into the distance. A lot of powerful aura has been clearly felt by him. This means that Marine has arrived. There is no time to delay. Next, I will rush to the front. Leonard, Hody Jones, Arlong. Follow me closely, don't fight with anyone. We must return to the ship and leave. Marine has reacted, and staying here is no longer necessary and will cause more trouble. Quote. Yes, Captain. Quote. The three of Hody Jones was taken aback, and said nervously. In the next second, Jangl took a deep breath, dashed on his feet, swung his long knife, and rushed out. The sword lords also roared and launched a charge. One sword flow. Big shock. The roar sounded, and the huge chopping wave exploded. It was only the first contact that the sword lords wailed and was rushed in all directions. Get out of lousy. Otherwise hack you to death. Leave none. Jangl roared loudly, thunderously, domineering and brutal. He swung his long sword, and the chopping wave shot out one by one, and no one could resist the swordsman in front of him for a second. It's a monster. Damn, his sword is too strong. What a wild, domineering sword intent is this? The sword lords were shocked and shocked. Follow the captain. Fall, but will be chopped into pieces by these crazy swordsmen. The war is about to start. After all, do you bully the less with more? We can't stand this kind of thing. On the other side, a team of figures also appeared from behind the tree. At the forefront, Jangl roared again and again, with a grim and ferocious expression. Kill. Waldo's eyes condensed, his expression gloomy. The Janao formation that was easily defeated by the captain was extremely dangerous to him. As long as he fell behind, he would be hacked to death. Then prepare to fight. At the same time, Zephyr narrowed his eyes, then sharply, his feet stopped. Faislin was sweating profusely, and also followed behind, extremely nervous. No Jiao, Leonard shouted, his voice distorted. Is it an unavoidable confrontation? Behind him, Sakazuki, Kuzan, and Pelusolino were in high spirits and their eyes lit up. Our captain is not alone. What? Pirates, swordsmen, marine, the tripartite confluence. Chapter 114. Advertise here. With the breeze blowing, the tree of Sabaody archipelago swayed gently, and the colorful bubbles slowly rose to the highest point, and then burst into pieces with a snap. The floating bubbles clearly reflect the situation of Block 29. A fierce figure was quickly hitting the crowd. Where he passed, a large number of sword lords flew out and screamed. The blood was thrown away, and the sound of clicking was endless, like a wild beast rushing into the flock, unstoppable. And beyond the fighting crowd, behind is the marine unit armed with rifles, who are seriously on alert, ready to fight. A large number of marines, from other neighborhoods, are constantly being reinforced here. Vice Admiral, Rear Admiral, school-level officers, and various marine elites are all coming quickly. Everyone's expression is full of seriousness and dignity. In the face of the Black Flag pirates, no one dared to treat it lightly. Such a world-famous big pirate once again appeared in the Sabaody archipelago, which is almost like a nuclear weapon. Quickly drive away the civilians in the neighborhood. Once the battle begins, it will affect a large number of people nearby. Fight for a while, you will form an elite team to cover the celestial dragons and other nobles and quickly evacuate. Remember, this task is the most important thing. After a pause, Zephyr spoke to the phone worm again. Although the group of maggots in the world is disgusting, but OOO is in front of people, this expression cannot be expressed. Be sure to remember who you are. We are Marine. Soon, a response came from the phone worm. Yes. Guarantee to complete the task. Hanging up the phone worm, Zephyr embraced his arms, his eyes fixed, and waited quietly. These swordsman challengers have become our best helpers. Next to him, Vice Admiral chuckled softly. It's useless to deal with a guy like Jangl if they come back anymore. Zephyr said lightly. That guy is like a fierce beast, no one can stop. This is the first time I have seen such a great swordsman. Vice Admiral solemnly said. Be prepared for battle. Next, even if we are just facing him alone, our forces will face a huge test. Zephyr said in a deep voice. Is it so powerful? Kuzan asked solemnly. You just need to know that even Garp can't take him in a one-on-one battle. After a pause, Zephyr said again. Furthermore, in the recent battle, he was even surrounded by the Black Flag gang, and once fell into the most dangerous situation in his life. When Kuzan heard this, his pupils contracted, even Garp Vice Admiral. The heroic Garp Vice Admiral is the man he admires most, but has even his idol face a desperate situation when facing each other. In the blink of an eye, sand and rocks were flying in front of him, and a lot of his body was collapsed to the sky, and a scream sounded. Coming. Zephyr raised his head and focused his entire body. At the same time, under the big tree on the other side, Waldo and others drew their weapons, their faces were solemn and solemn. Go and rescue our captain who caused a big deal again. If you don't show up again, the captain will be very wronged. Appear at the moment when you need it most, will the captain be moved by the pain? Everyone laughed and stepped out. Snapped. In the sky, the bubbles reflecting the scenery shattered. At this moment, Jangl Liú jumped high, broke through the encirclement of the swordsman, and came to the open space. Behind him are the remaining sword magnates with shocked faces, tension and fear, and the panting Horty Jones 4. Marine. Leonard opened his mouth wide and shouted loudly. How come Marine appears? These are troublesome. Both Horty Jones and Arlong became nervous. The one at the front is Marine Admiral Zephyr. Even Admiral is dispatched. Faislin's pupils contracted and said in shock. Shocking the auction venue, this situation is in my expectation. Jangl Liú grinned after a pause. He glanced behind him, and the sword lords who touched his eyes all took a step back, and no one was doing any more for the time being. The invincible momentum just now obviously shocked them. Taking the long knife back and carrying it on his shoulders, Jangl Liú had sharp eyes and looked at the dense and imposing Marine in front of him, and he spoke. What, Marine, are you going to fight a battle here? All Marines were on alert. Zephyr's gaze narrowed and said lightly, what you did has seriously disrupted the order of Sabaody Archipelago. For celestial dragons, it has committed an unforgivable crime. Originally, no matter how you make trouble on this island, as long as it's not too much, we can open one eye and close one eye. After all, a big pirate like you, working in such an environment will have a great impact. This is not what Marine wants. But, Jangl Liú, you angered the nobleman. The words were loud and loud, floating in the air. What did he do? My god, celestial dragons. This guy, did you shoot celestial dragons? Too fierce. Behind them, the sword lords were shocked. Someone's eyes had changed. They looked at Jangl Liú, full of awe and worship. What did I do to celestial dragons? Jangl Liú was taken aback and asked. He didn't seem to act on celestial dragons. Zephyr cast his gaze and said in a deep voice, you scared them. Jangl Liú was stunned, and the whole audience was stunned, with strange looks one after another. After a while, ha 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 ha, there was a loud laughter. Jangl Liú raised his long knife, and the tip of the knife pointed directly at the opposite side. This is what makes me happy. It seems that you didn't realize the seriousness of the problem at all. Zephyr said in a deep voice. In the next second, he touched his fists, and flames burned in his eyes. In the name of my Marine Admiral Zephyr, from now on. The eyes were suddenly bright and fierce. I will arrest you. Jangl Liú's figure also moved, stepping forward, and the long knife made a surprise gesture. Come on then. Whirring whirring. The sound of the wind swept across everyone's heads, and the nervous, suffocating breath spread all over the spot. Everyone went hunting. Marine's uniform was fluttering, and the cloak of justice fluttered behind him. Someone quietly swallowed and sweat dripped from his chin. Suddenly, instantly, boom. The ground exploded, and the two bodies shot out and collided in an instant. Boom. There was a low impact sound, a fist and a long knife suddenly struck, ripples, lightning bursts, and the wind swept out. The battle between the world's top pirates and Marine Admiral. It has started. There was an exclamation. In the next second, Kuzan, Sakazuki, and Pelusolino rushed out and rushed towards Horty Jones. But at the same time, Waldo and others descended from the sky, drew their weapons, and aimed at Marine. Understand the power of our black flag. Marine. Chapter 115. Advertise here. Buzzing. The long knife collided with the fist, and the space was shaking and distorted at this moment. Jangl Liú suddenly smiled and stared at Zephyr who was close at hand. Want to catch me? It seems not so easy. Zephyr's eyes were sharp, and he crossed Jangl Liú's body and glanced at Waldo and others. Whether it is you or Waldo and others, they are Marine's targets. When the two of them finished their words, they took a step back, and then rushed towards each other, making a heavy blow. Brother Waldo, Cyrus, Bing Jack, you are all here. Leonard, Arlong said excitedly when he saw people suddenly appearing in front of him. Hey, trainee crew, you seem to have caused a lot of trouble. But now is not the time to talk about this, prepare to go out. Waldo laughed loudly. He glanced at the audience, and the surrounding Marines surged like a bee. General-level officers and school-level officers formed an elite frontline army with amazing aura. Kill, catch the black flag, never let them escape. Roaring, the Marines charged. Then, let's act too. Cyrus held the big sword in both hands and shouted loudly. In the next second, both sides rushed towards each other, and the battle started in an instant. Momo fruit, 100 times faster. Waldo spit out in a low voice, his body increased in speed in an instant, and he reached the front of a vice admiral in an instant, and slammed his fist at the opponent. The latter raised his arm to resist, yelling, Iron body. Boom. The dull collision sounded, and after a breath, Vice Admiral's eyes showed a look of shock, and he flew out with a bang, hitting a large tree in the distance. Come on, some guys enough to see. Don't underestimate our black flag. Waldo yelled, waved his fists, and knocked the surrounding marine away with 3 punches and 2 kicks. In the center of the battlefield, a hollow area was vacated. Your crew members are all very energetic guys. Zephyr waved his fist, flickering left and right, came to Jangl Liú, and slammed his fist. Grinder. The latter lifted the knife and swung it out. Boom. The impact sound came out, feeling the strength on the blade. Jangl Liú grinned. Don't underestimate our black flag, Zephyr Admiral. I never underestimated you, but I think the feng shui of today's battle lies on Marine's side. Zephyr laughed condensedly. Oh. Jangl Liú retreated, turned around, swung the long knife again, and slashed towards the opponent. When Zephyr raised his right hand to block the knife, and the electric spark flashed, revealing the seastone metal wristband covering the wrist. Among those guys who challenge you, there are a few very good powerhouses. Zephyr said. The two tried their best to blast each other out. In the end, they all stepped back again, then charged up and attacked again. In terms of strength, Jangl Liú did not take much advantage. Zephyr of this period was also very strong, possessing a strong combat power of the admiral level. The two bodies kept flashing and colliding constantly, but in a short time, they could not end the battle. Suddenly, a strong wind came from behind him, Jangl Liú's eyes flashed, and his figure quickly turned sideways. We are still here, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. There was a loud roar, the long knife slashed down his side, Zephyr smiled on his face, and took a few steps back. The sneak attack slashed down, and the ground instantly cracked. Such a slash is also a great swordsman level. Jangl Liú stepped on the ground with both feet, his waist twisted, and the long knife made an arc, rapidly changing positions. In just an instant, he faced the attacker face to face. The attacker was a tall, thin man with a pointed face and sharp eyes. When he saw him turning around, his eyes slammed, and the long knife in his hand swung down again. Line cut. Jangl Liú stomped on the ground, with an inexplicable thick breath on the long knife. One sword flow. Cut. The strength and speed on the body exploded in an instant. Jangl Liú's figure suddenly flickered, the sharp-faced Zhanao's pupils contracted, and a light appeared in his eyes. Extremely fast light. The two passed by. Jangl Liú stood still, raised the knife in both hands with a pointed face, bowed his head in amazement, and looked at his body. A blood stain appeared quickly from the position of the chest to the abdomen, and then the blood spurted out, and he fell to the ground with a thud. Okay. What a quick knife. Call. When the wind hit, Jangl Liú suddenly turned around, facing Zephyr who was pounding. The long knife in his right hand was too late to change the position, and he launched a defensive posture. Increase in quality, 5,000 tons of heavy punches. With his left fist clenched, he bombarded out fiercely, and actually fought Zephyr head-on. The latter was obviously a little surprised. The first time he saw the great swordsman, he would clenched his fists and touched others. Jangl Liú in the data does not have such information. Find flowers. Haha. Better than fists, but the old man's advantage, Jangl Liú. Zephyr laughed, his fist clenched, and the airflow above it turned. I do not think so. Jangl Liú's face was gloomy, and he spit out. Boom. The two fists collided fiercely, and the violent force burst out in an instant, and Zephyr's whole body was shocked, his expression shocked. Then, a wave of air spread out, and the ground under the feet of the two rumblingly collapsed, and the entire area began to shake violently. After 2 breaths, Zephyr flew out towards the rear. Zephyr Admiral. The Marines changed their colors and shouted in shock. Jangl Liú closed his fist, flicked the long knife, the tip of the knife pointed forward. 000. I have always believed that the real strong will not just pass one. My fist is also very heavy. After hitting 18 big trees and 8 buildings in a row, Zephyr's strength was only dissipated, and he was lying in the ruins, his face was a little astonished and a little shocked. This kid's fist. Like a mountain. I have never felt such a heavy punch. No wonder even Garp can't help him. Slowly stood up, patted the dust on his body, Zephyr spit out the blood from his mouth, collided with his fists, and his eyes were full of fighting spirit. What a powerful shivering kid. On the other side, in front of Jangl Liú's eyes, 3 figures rushed towards him. The immature but familiar image made him recognize the identity of the other party in an instant. The next 3 Admiral. Interesting. With a flick of the long knife, Jangl Liú tilted slightly and rushed out as well. Let me see how much strength you have now. In the next second, the 3 figures disappeared. Suddenly, the golden light shone, brilliantly dazzling, so Jangl Liú couldn't help squinting his eyes. He could hardly see everything in front of his eyes. Have you been kicked by the speed of light? Terrible Mr. Pirate. Unable to describe the speed of this moment, Jangl Liú's eyes lit up, and the long knife in his hand was erected and stood in front of him. Boom. A huge force struck him, and his figure immediately swept toward the rear. After more than 10 meters, it stopped. Jangl Liú looked forward, showing a figure with golden light, grinning grinningly. Funny Marine Boy. 1. Chapter 116. Advertise here. Shaking his slightly sore wrist, and squeezing the long knife in his hand again, Jangl Liú stood up straight, the light in his eyes sharpened. Logia. Sparkling fruit capable person. At a speed comparable to the speed of light, along with the enormous power generated at the speed of light, Pelusolino, one of the next 3 admiral, has a powerful attack ability even at this moment. In the next second, his figure flashed suddenly and disappeared. When he reappeared, the man had already arrived in front of Pelusolino, and armament hockey was wrapped on the long knife, and it was cut down. The pupils of the latter shrank, and a golden long sword appeared in his right hand. Sky Kong Yunjian. Dang dang dang. In the rapid collision, the golden light flickered, Pelusolino backed back again and again, sweating on his forehead, and the strong pressure made him feel his scalp numb. The weight on the opponent's long sword almost crushed him, and the terrifying sword intent attacked his will at all times. Only when the truth is facing each other can we understand how powerful this man is. After dozens of rounds, Jangl Liú knocked Pelusolino away with a single blow. The latter turned into golden light, and fell on the ground tens of meters away, breathing heavily, dripping sweat on his face. What a terrible monster. Stepping out, Jangl Liú was about to chase again, but at this moment, a cold chill swept in, and instantly penetrated into his back and shoulders. Crack wipe. The ice froze him and made his movements freeze there. After a breath, Jangl Liú's face was covered with white frost, and his arm holding a long knife was also frozen and quickly turned into an ice sculpture. Call. Not far away, Kuzan put his hands on the ground, exhaling a cold breath, his expression serious and solemn. Porsarino, are you okay? He asked aloud. Pelusolino bent over and vomited a mouthful of blood to the ground, his face was pale and forced a smile. It's okay. Facing such a monster alone will definitely be fatal. Aside Sakazuki, his right arm has been turned into hot lava, and it is visible to the naked eye into the shape of a dog's head, humming. The next fatal blow, hand it over to me. Even the world's top big pirate can never withstand the joint attack of the 3 of us. A deep voice sounded, and Sakazuki's figure flashed, and he came to Jangl Liú's frozen body. The hot lava fell, burning the grass on the ground and sparking sparks. However, at this moment, crack, the frozen left hand suddenly shattered, and the 5 fingers trembled lightly, and suddenly grabbed his head. Carefully, Kuzan's expression changed drastically, and he shouted. Sakazuki shook his whole body, and was about to throw his right fist, but it was already too late. That big hand grabbed his head fiercely, and then followed closely, with a bang, and the ice covering Jangl Liú was shattered. Do you really think you can defeat me with such a simple attack? Too naive, the naive fellows of Marine. The big hand slammed, Sakazuki's eyes widened, feeling that his head was about to be squeezed at this moment, the lava in his right hand dissipated, and Sakazuki cried out loudly. Immediately afterwards, Jangl Liú stepped out, raised his left hand, and grabbed Sakazuki in front of him directly, and then his eyes were fiercely pressed against the ground in front of him. 8,000 tons of pressure, meteorite impact. Sakazuki was directly pressed into the soil by this press, and with a bang, the dust was flying, and a huge pit appeared under him. Sakazuki, Kuzan and Pelusolino's expressions changed drastically, and they exclaimed. Puff. The whole body was in a large font, and it was directly pressed into the ground. At a depth of nearly 10 meters, even the ground around the body was cracked at this moment. Circles of ripples radiated to the surroundings, and the ground cracked and shivered. Am I underestimated by you? Unexpectedly, someone has confidence and can easily solve my words by saying it. Stand up slowly, let go of his left hand, Jangl Liú said coldly. At this moment, the momentum reached an unparalleled peak. Looking at Sakazuki on the soles of his feet again, his eyes were pale and blood was running across his face. He was unconscious and fell into a coma. It's just a blow. Pelusolino took a deep breath, his eyes dignified. The man who had just fought with him was obviously not serious. Compared with his strength, Sakazuki was not weak, and even stronger attacking Sakazuki was instantly killed. What a terrible guy this is. Kuzan's eyes were dignified, sweat came out of his forehead. Next, it's time for me to attack. Jangl Liú's words came out, putting tremendous pressure on everyone. His figure disappeared in the next second, and when he appeared again, he was in front of Kuzan. Glacier. The latter was shocked, patted his hands out, and groaned in his mouth. However, after only half a sentence, the coldness on his body had not been mobilized, and he was already stunned by a long knife, and he stood there stiffly. One sword flow. Shock. Chill. Kuzan felt a deep chill at this moment. A flash of light flashed by, and he almost couldn't react quickly. Immediately afterwards, there was a cold on his body, then heat. Jangl Liú had already passed him and passed him by. Kuzan. Porasolino yelled. The two faced each other, and Kuzan saw panic and fear in the opposite eyes. He slowly lowered his head, seeing a lot of blood in his eyes, and a long bloodstain on his abdomen clearly appeared. A quick attack. Like Sakazuki, he was also killed by the opponent. Puff. Face down, Kuzan fell, and a pool of blood soon formed under him. His knife is too fast. Being hit, with the physical qualities of Sakazuki and Kuzan, they couldn't hold up a blow. Pelusolino's eyes were solemn, and his whole body was trembling slightly. At this moment, they seemed to be facing a mountain, feeling heavy and majestic, almost insurmountable. As he said, we are too immature. Pelusolino admitted the reality in his heart. They hold the innately powerful Logia fruit, but this does not mean that they can deal with the world's top pirates. Whether it's armed color or observation hockey, they haven't mastered it yet. Even in terms of military rank, he is now only a school-level officer. In an instant, he will be killed in seconds. After swallowing, Pelusolino raised his hands, his eyes trembling, but bright. Shinso. Huh. But facing me, it doesn't help much. One sword flow. You underestimated the length of a swordsman's attack, and you underestimated me. The long knife was slowly lying flat in front of him, with the tip of the knife pointed at the opponent. Jangl Liú's eyes were sharp, and the next second, the long knife pierced through the space. It seems, not. Thank you for reading this story at hotmtnovel.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. There was a ray of light between the fingers, and the laser beam flew out in the next second. The knife turned into a phantom at this moment, cutting off every light accurately, drawing an arc, and exploding flames behind Jangl Liú. In close combat, I will face nearly 10 times more pressure than before. Only dodge, or long-range attack. On the opposite side, Jangl Liú's long knife shook slightly and slashed away in response to the light. I thought you would have a better performance. It's a smart way to keep a distance. Chapter 117. Advertise here. The sharp slash, at this moment, was like a long knife extending, turning into an extremely long shinso, carrying terrifying penetrating power, and instantly came to Pelusolino. Such swordsmanship. There was a big shock in his eyes, almost under conditioned reflex. Pelusolino quickly became elemental, changing into golden light, but even so, the slash still penetrated his body. Boom. There was a dull landing sound, and Pelusolino's golden light dissipated, and he lay down on the ground. There was a trace of blood on his left shoulder, and the blood soon soaked his clothes. Just a little bit, the heart was pierced. With an expression of horror on his face, Pelusolino was almost shocked. His figure flashed and turned into golden light and quickly moved away. After repelling Pelusolino, Jangl Liú withdrew his long sword, turned around without rush, and faced Admiral Zephyr, who had returned to the battlefield again. You were so merciless to my 3 students like this. Zephyr said in a deep voice, his eyes gleaming with cold light. They seem to be very confident in their strength. I'm just telling them how big the world is. Jangl Liú said with a chuckle. Looking down, Sakazuki and Kuzan, who were lying in a pool of blood, took another look at Pelusolino, who was covering his shoulder with a bloody mouth not 18 away and gasping for breath. My beloved apprentices, it really makes the old man angry to endure such a heavy injury. As the words uttered, the angry breath on Zephyr's body also rose up, and his aura suddenly changed. In the next second, he strode wildly, and his figure disappeared instantly. Accept my anger, Jangl Liú. Zephyr roared. The thick arm, like a huge machine, waved towards Jangl Liú. The latter lifted the knife and quickly collided. Boom 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 boom. The figures of the two kept moving, and when they fought, the electric light flickered, and the shock waves swayed in circles around them. Boom. After more than 10 breaths, Jangl Liú was hit by Zephyr's heavy blow and flew out, falling into the auction room amidst howling noises, knocking out a piece of rubble. Following him, Zephyr chased and the two collided again. In this fierce battle, the auction site collapsed and broke apart. In the end, with Zephyr being knocked into the air, the entire venue was directly chopped into pieces, raising dust in the sky. You have to fight me at the cost of at least 5 blocks nearby, Zephyr. Jangl Liú stepped out, his eyes sharp. Alongside, the attacks of Waldo and others were equally intense and anxious. But with the continuous reinforcement of Marine, the situation seems to be gradually turning into a disadvantage, and wounds have appeared on many crew members. Fighting in the Sabaody archipelago, such an environment, obviously will not be beneficial to the pirates. In particular, it is extremely close to the naval headquarters and the center of the world government. Damn, its kid, really doesn't care about anything. Zephyr scolded. A senseless battle, meaningless, you know very well that you can't take me down by yourself. But if the battle continues, I will destroy the entire Sabaody archipelago. Jangl Liú gripped the long knife with his right hand, and put his left hand on the other knife around his waist. Zephyr, I haven't used my full strength yet. Zephyr, staring at Jangl Liú, hesitated in his heart when he heard the words. What the other party said is indeed the truth. According to the information, Jangl Liú is indeed a great swordsman of the 2nd class, instead of fighting with a sword now. Such a powerful appearance, isn't it full of strength? What a perverted monster. Zephyr couldn't help but sigh. Don't believe it. Then let you see my strength. Jangl Liú saw that the other party did not respond, but his left hand was clenched into a fist, and said slowly. The next second, he punched the ground in front of him. 10,000 tons of weight, meteorite strike. The ground shook violently, as if there was no movement. But as time passed, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds later. Boom. The earth began to tremble violently, the surface quickly began to collapse, and spider web-like cracks spread in all directions. In just an instant, the ground with a radius of 10,000 meters was cracked and sunken. The Marines were inexplicably horrified, standing unsteady, and some people reacted quickly, running fast into the distance. Boom. The ground continued to collapse, and ripples of shock waves spread. The scene resembling the end of the world came into everyone's eyes. The ground collapsed, and the silent shock wave destroyed the buildings and trees on the ground in an instant. People who were close were hit into the distance, spitting out blood. In a short period of time, the ground area of more than 10 kilometers, the entire 29th block, was turned into rubble at this moment, with smoke and dust everywhere, and chaos. This is. When everything subsided, the Marines opened their mouths and were speechless in shock. The smoke cleared, Jangl Liú's figure appeared in everyone's eyes again, but it brought invisible pressure and fear. Zephyr, in the next blow, I might destroy the entire Sabaody archipelago. A soft word came out, Jangl Liú smiled. Zephyr's pupils contracted, cracks were everywhere under his feet, and his fists clenched. Blue blue blue. At this moment, the phone worm rang in his arms, very quickly. He hesitated a little and connected to the phone worm. Get out, Zephyr, our plan. The battlefield is not in Sabaody archipelago. A deep, solemn voice came, and it seemed extremely thick. Sengoku, Zephyr murmured. He hung up the phone bug and looked up at the man in front of him. We will meet again. Jangl Liú grinned. Then, thank you Zephyr Admiral. He rolled his eyes and looked at Marine who surrounded Waldo and others. Let your people get out of here. Zephyr condensed his eyes and raised his hand to the distance. Let them go. The Marines responded quickly and quickly evacuated, standing not far away, to make way for all the members of the Black Flag 000 group. But the vigilance in his eyes did not relax at all. Jangl Liú's eyes flickered, and he put away the knife in his hand. He slowly turned around and turned his back to Zephyr. Do you want to put the battlefield above the sea? Zephyr's eyes moved sharply. What? Don't you dare. Jangl Liú burst out laughing. The sea, but the pirate's place. Throwing a sentence, Jangl Liú took a step forward and left. It is indeed not a good thing to be entangled with Marine here, especially for Waldo and others, it is very unfavorable. When he approached everyone, he clearly saw Waldo, Cyrus and the others heaved a sigh of relief. If we continue to fight, we may not be able to hold it. Cyrus said solemnly. Horty Jones, Arlong, and Leonard are all covered with scars, and they are extremely weak. I'm sorry, the three of us are dragging everyone down. Jangl Liú smiled slightly, stretched out his hand and patted the three of them. Anyone who was strong has grown up when he was weak. It's time to go, everyone. Letterfield, they should have been waiting very anxiously. Smiles appeared on everyone's faces. Yes, Captain. A group of people quickly disappeared before Marine's eyes. Zephyr's eyes drooped, his eyes thoughtful. After a long while, he sighed softly. Above the world, there will be a monster like Jangl Liú unexpectedly. For Marine, the pressure has really increased. Chapter 118. Advertise here. Teacher, do you really let them go like this? Pelusolino's figure appeared behind Zephyr and said solemnly. He pressed one hand against the wound on his shoulder, his expression dignified. The strength of Jangl Liú allowed him to thoroughly see the breadth of this world. They were indeed very immature who had just walked out of the Marine Academy. The battlefield will be above the sea. Sabaody archipelago is not where Marine is willing to go to war. In this sensitive area, unless we have the ability to crush the enemy 100%, all losses will be unbearable for us. After a pause, Zephyr's eyes drifted to the other side. Some guys, they won't let us continue. Pelusolino followed the teacher's gaze, his expression paused slightly, revealing a helpless expression. There, the three celestial dragons trembled all over, with gray-headed faces and miserable appearances, and they were roaring at the Marine team who had rescued them. Damn, you damn bastards. Even to launch an offensive here, even if we don't care about us, if we hurt a little bit, I will definitely not spare you. Incompetent Marine, how can you tolerate such a brave guy rushing into the auction venue? Look here, what exactly did you do? On this island, in the streets where celestial dragons are strolling, something like this can happen, and I will never spare you. The roar of celestial dragons can be clearly heard right here. Zephyr and Pelusolino both pretended not to hear, and quickly turned their heads and left. Not far away, Sakazuki and Kuzan were quickly carried away by Marine for rescue. The brief confrontation with the Black Flag group caused Marine to lose a lot, especially Jangl Liú's strength, which made Marine's admiral and vice admiral levels jealous. Obviously, there is too much to be taken into account in a war with such a big pirate. Time, place, and preparation are all decisive factors. Heal your injury as soon as possible, and then see Sakazuki and Kuzan. The next war may go on soon. After a pause, Zephyr said in a condensed voice. But remember, now to avoid fighting with these big pirates, your strength is not strong enough. Pelusolino nodded thoughtfully. I see, teacher. At the same time, Jangl Liú and his group had already merged with Tianyushi. It's great to see you all right, Jangl Liú. Tianyu rushed over, tears in his eyes. Sorry, I didn't help you a little bit. Jangl Liú smiled. You are very useful when you are young. Tianyushi was stunned, but she didn't realize what she would do, and in the battle, she couldn't get the slightest busy with everyone. I will also work hard to practice. In the next battle, I must help you and everyone. When Tianyu gritted his teeth, said firmly. Jangl Liú nodded and smiled. Koshiro has disappeared. Jangl Liú glanced around and found no trace of the other party, so he quickly left with everyone. After a while, everyone boarded the Black Flag pirate ship. I knew you would come back safely. It seems that this time, the island is not very peaceful, Jangl Liú. Letterfield paused the umbrella in his hand on the deck, let out a stern sound, and grinned. Be prepared, Letterfield, maybe, soon, we will face Marines' armed forces. Jangl Liú said in a deep voice. Behind him, Waldo and others were all dignified. Yes, Letterfield blinked and smiled again. But now, you should take a good look at your injuries. He glanced at Phylan again. There are new partners, welcome. Fesslin opened his mouth and finally lowered his head. I have nowhere to go. Welcome, Faithrin. Leonard smiled. Jangl Liú turned his head. It seems to congratulate us, we have one more partner. Thank you everyone. Phylan said excitedly. Ha 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 ha. There was a roar of laughter, and the atmosphere on the deck changed from the solemn and solemn one to the lively. On the contrary, there is no tension at all. Z% 1% at. Then, get ready to go, the next stop, the City of Seven Waters. Jangl Liú sighed softly. The black flag hunted and trembled, and the anchor was retracted by the crew in rhythmic shouts. Subsequently, the sails swelled, and the pirate ship slowly left the port. As long as there is a captain, there will always be countless troubles. Sabaody Archipelago, as expected, something unexpected happened. But, overall, the result is good. No, there may be more than 100 warships waiting for us on the sea ahead. The words with laughter gradually dissipated in the sea breeze. The Marine squad, hidden not far from the port, retracted its telescope, and dialed the phone worm with a serious face. Quote. The Haichi group has left the port. Quote. Received, we should act too. At the same time, in naval headquarters, Kong stood up suddenly, his expression serious and solemn. He scanned the group of general vice admirals sitting at the conference table with majestic eyes, and shouted in a deep voice, it's time to act. Don't let Sengoku wait long. Don't let the black flag wait for a long time. This battle will determine whether we can solve the black flag before it reaches its peak. It's a very important battle that has a great impact on the world. Taking a deep breath, Sora shouted suddenly. Please do your best, everyone. Set off. A warship, carrying a strong aura, slowly sailed out. Boarded the flagship of the sky, Ren Haifeng blew, shouted at the phone bug, and issued an order. At the next moment, all vice admirals stood up with serious expressions. Yes. After the third team has assembled, that the boarding is complete. The second team is assembled and boarding is complete. In this battle, only success is allowed, no failure is allowed. I saw a black artillery on the warship, quickly adjusting its position. An icy, but powerful, iron-blooded breath filled the audience. The next second, naval headquarters is in the inner harbor. In the next second, the huge gate of justice slowly opened, making a buzzing sound. Already ready for battle, a total of 56 warships, fully equipped, ready to fight. Thank you for reading this story at hotmtnovel.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. This is the Black Flag, Jangl Liú and the others, the moment with the least number of people, and the best time for Marine. The first team is assembled and boarding is complete. The 28th Squadron is assembled and boarding is complete. Sora's eyes were sharp, and he shouted in a low voice. Quote. Dao Dao shouted loudly one after another, and Kong glanced away. Chapter 119. Advertise here. Sabaody Archipelago. Da. Dense footsteps sounded quickly, and a large number of Marines were gathering quickly. At the port, warships quickly approached, ready to sail. Assemble all the Marines of the island to me at the fastest speed. In the shortest time, strive to gather the largest number of troops. Zephyr shouted in a deep voice. The Vice Admiral behind nodded solemnly. I have notified the 4 or 5 Marine bases that are near here, and they are all sending warships over. It can be said that with the naval headquarters as the center and radiating to the surroundings, all the Marines in the adjacent sea areas have been mobilized. In order to deal with the Black Flag, Marine has to pay such a huge price and mobilize such a huge manpower and material resources. This is really unimaginable. Taking a breath, Vice Admiral said solemnly. It's all worth it. Only when you face that man in person, you will know how terrifying his potential is. Zephyr said solemnly. He looked at the large number of warships docked on the coast ahead, his eyes gradually sharpened. This battle is a rare opportunity for Marine. The Black Flag with only one pirate ship was the weakest time, and they got the news that the current Black Flag pirate ship has reached its limit. Above this sea, a pirate ship reaching its limit is the fatal weakness. Once the ship is destroyed, the people on it, no matter how powerful, will not be able to avoid the most tragic end. Stronger than the Roger pirates, surrounded by Golden Lion, they were almost destroyed. Since Master Marshal issued the order, the number of warships transferred in the nearby waters has exceeded 100. Such a scene, such a scale, is almost unimaginable. A Jangl Liú has made Marine so much stressed. Vice Admiral let out a sigh, looking inexplicable. You just need to know that he is no less inferior to Roger. Zephyr's voice slowly drifted away. Subsequently, a large number of Marines boarded the warship. A fleet of warships quickly left the port. This day is an intense and exciting day for Marines. Many of the soldiers had never seen such a scene. The large-scale mobilization of troops and the formation of a huge fleet on the sea are only for annihilating a dark horse among the pirates. It is conceivable that once the war begins, the scene will be extremely spectacular. Time passed quietly, everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. On the second day after leaving the Sabaody archipelago, there was a crunching sound on the Black Flag pirate ship, which aroused the tension of the entire ship. The keel of the ship is broken, and it has been supporting it all the time. But now, the hull has a tendency to collapse. This ship, I don't know how long it can last. Guy Ram said solemnly. Arrive to the city of Seven Waters as soon as possible, Gairam, hurry up and fix it. This difficult period, we must overcome it. Jangl said in a deep voice. He glanced at the sky by the sea, his expression a little gloomy. The dark clouds are gathering, and the breeze is gradually gathering and turning into a strong wind. A bad premonition quietly rose up in his heart, making his heart as heavy as a mountain. Marine, it will come out anytime. He glanced at the undulating sea again, his heart deepened. The climate is also very bad for us. After a while, the pirate guarding the mast roared loudly. Captain, the wind has a tendency to become stronger, and the storm is coming. Jangl sighed while looking at the violently shaking sails and the cracks spreading on the ship. The leak in the house is always rainy and rainy. The heavy rain did not pour down, but the sea breeze was getting stronger and stronger. This wind is too wrong. Waldo murmured. The waves are not right. On the other side, Hody Jones also said solemnly. Fesslin took the hammer, mending the cracks on the boat everywhere, with a serious expression, watching the strange weather, his heart became heavier and heavier. There was still no heavy rain in the sky, but as the ship moved forward, dark clouds gradually shrouded their heads, and the sky instantly became dim. How long is it from the city of Seven Waters? Jangl asked aloud. Bin Jack took the chart and quickly made a judgment. We have just crossed Ennie's lobby, and we are away from the city of Seven Waters. At the speed of a ship, there should be less than 3 hours of voyage left. If nothing happens, you can approach the capital of Seven Waters in 3 hours. After hearing this, Jangl glanced at the sea where the atmosphere was not right. 3 hours, muttered, the cloud in his heart became thicker and thicker. Suddenly, Jangl's eyes condensed suddenly. The other crew members on the ship all had their pupils contracted at this moment and their expressions were shaken. Wow! Above the sea, the waves rolled upside down, slapped with a clear and loud sound. The wind is bigger. Marine. On the top of the mast, the pirate crew shouted hoarsely against the strong wind. Dense black spots suddenly appeared. As the sea undulates, they are heading toward them, and the ship with anchor like flags, at this moment with a solemn, condensed, majestic momentum, mighty and mighty. Dangling came. At a glance, there are nearly 25 ships. Lined up, blocking any angle from which the black flag gang advances. Turn the rudder. Waldo turned his head and shouted. Faced with such a number of warships, a pirate ship that is about to be retired, hopes are too slim. But suddenly, the sea on both sides suddenly rolled over, accompanied by the loud sound of water, each with 25 warships rushing out of the sea. The barrel shifted and aimed at them. There are also warships in the rear. Their boat is coated and hidden under the water. Damn it, have you followed us all the time? With panic and angry expressions on their faces, the crew roared loudly. Undoubtedly, at this moment, the Black Flag pirate group was surrounded by warships that had been prepared for a long time. Jangl narrowed his eyes slightly, and a smile suddenly appeared at the corner of his mouth. He picked up the binoculars and looked at the huge flagship directly opposite. Null, Sengoku, Zephyr, gather 100 warships, dozens or hundreds of vice admiral, do you want to completely encircle us in this sea area? What a great idea. Slowly exhaling, Jangl sighed softly. It looks like a desperate situation. On Waldo's face, there is no longer a relaxed expression. Captain, now, what should we do? Letterfield clenched the umbrella and sword in his hand and looked up at the sky. The time, the right place, and the people are not on our side. Jangl pulled out the long knife from his waist and grinned suddenly. No, in this case. The time and the location are right, but it's all on our side. In the next second, the sea rolled, the waves undulated, and the wind above his head suddenly became even stronger. Bing Jack looked at the violent sponge, his face suddenly changed at this moment. This is a natural disaster known as Yakwa Ragna, the gods of water. It's a big tsunami. Chapter 120. Advertise here. The gods of water. Tsunami. The sudden words changed the color of the entire ship. Fine sweat oozes from his forehead. Under such circumstances, natural disasters are definitely not good news for them. Jangl narrowed his eyes and grinned. The terrifying tsunami is not good news for them. But for Marine, who is mobilizing troops on a large scale and carrying out encirclement and annihilation, it is also not a good thing. At this moment, the situation of the Black Flag is like Roger and others surrounded by the Golden Lion flying pirates in the second half of the Grand Line. The same terrible weather, the same large number of enemies, are at an absolute desperate disadvantage. God helps me too, Jangl murmured with a smile. This is a chaotic war. Everyone, your next task is to ensure your safety 100%. In the next second, he raised his voice and said to everyone on board. Only by surviving and welcoming our tomorrow, it will be bright. Open-minded, optimistic, and smiling voice echoed on the pirate ship, which calmed the crew's nervousness slightly. Call. Waldo took a deep breath and grinned. This is a very difficult battle. Brothers, all live. The neat response sounded, and the momentum on the pirate ship looked different inexplicably. With the help of the power of the water gods, will you survive this chaotic war? Bin Jack murmured, looking at the warships on the opposite side and focusing on the opponent's artillery. He took a deep breath. But before that, make sure to be under the next bombardment. This ship will not sink. The strong wind swept through, blowing the black flag hunting and shaking. Everything on the ship was shaking, and it seemed that it was about to disintegrate under the increasingly strong wind. At the same time, above the warship, rare opportunity. Even next, we may face an unprecedented tsunami. But if the Black Flag gang can be wiped out, such a risk is totally worth taking. Kong said with sharp eyes. This is a full-scale naval battle, surrounded by 100 warships. Jangl and others are completely desperate. For us Marine, it was the perfect opening. Plus the coming tsunami. Sengoku said with confidence flashing in his eyes. But even so, we still can't underestimate the enemy. The other side is very likely to use this natural disaster to reverse the situation. Zephyr said solemnly. Sora's face was serious and naturally wouldn't relax. Neither Jangl nor Letterfield was an enemy that could easily win. Master Marshal, the quartet fleet is about to enter the range, and it will be able to launch an attack immediately. Please direct. At this time, the school-level officer behind him shouted loudly. The empty eyes condensed, and without hesitation, he issued a combat command. Don't hesitate, give me a fierce fight. Even if the enemy only has one ship, we must bring up the spirit of 12 points. This is a crucial battle. It must not be taken lightly. Yes, the Marines held their heads high and their morale rose at this moment. The top of the head was densely covered with dark clouds, and the strong wind swept in, and the waves rolled up and stirred up and down. The sea and the sky seemed to be raging at this moment. All the atmosphere shows signs that the situation is about to come. Wow, the hull was shaking, making a slight collision, and everyone on the Black Flag pirate ship held their breath. In 4 directions, Marine's fleet is about to be within range. It is conceivable that next, they will face a terrible coverage attack. In such a crushing game, the enemy doesn't even need any strategy. Covering with shells and crushing the saturation attack is enough. Coming. Karma 8 Arms, holding the sword, suddenly let out a low growl. Training crew, hide me honestly. The others, do everything they can to protect the ship under your feet. Waldo yelled. The atmosphere became extremely tense in an instant. Janglu's eyes were serious, and he drew another knife. The aura on his body rose and was stronger than ever. Want me to go to hell here? Then I will let you see. With 2 knives, one on the left and the other on the right, Jangl stood up straight, majestic and stalwart, with a hideous face. Even in hell, you can't accept lousy. Suddenly, a deafening shelling sounded, and a golden lightning pierced the void on the top of the sky dome. Fire. Boom 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 boom. The pitch-black cannonballs were pieced together into a curtain in an instant, obscuring all the field of vision. It is hard to describe how many shells there are at this moment, like a black crow, bringing the smell of death. Find flowers. Shoo, hoo, hoo. The undulating shells pierced the void, making a sharp piercing sound. The depressive, suffocating breath filled the eyes of the owner of the Black Flag pirate ship. I have never seen such a number of shells in my life. Even from a long distance, you can still smell the hot and trembling smell of death. Can you survive? Us. Several trainee crew members were trembling all over at this moment. In such a scene, they couldn't even stand up, so they could only hide in the corner trembling, holding their heads in their hands. Follow the instructions of the captain and cadres, hide, and live. Let them see our strength, guys. 000. Tell them. Hell, can't take us. Jangl roared, the black flag flying violently above his head. The waves rolled up at this moment, and rolled the pirate ship to the highest point. Ooh. The gust of wind roared, and the tsunami of the water gods was brewing rapidly. The pitch-black shells fell in dense numbers, parabola after another, showing colorful scenery, but carrying the smell of death. Coming. Waldo roared, and the cannonball in his hand shot out. Momo fruit, 130 times increase, blow lousy. Boom. In an instant, the pitch-black artillery shells suddenly became larger, becoming 130 times the size, hitting the air, and bursting into large flames. Boom 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 boom. Immediately afterwards, one shell after another was blocked in the big explosion and exploded above everyone's heads. Jangl stood on the bow, facing the front, taking a deep breath. The figure turned slightly, and the 2 knives made a strange air current around him. 3 mountains and 5 mountains, 8 deserts and 4 seas. A green dragon emerges from the clouds, and a hidden dragon on the bottom of the sea. The knees ejected suddenly, and the flying body was placed between all the shells. At this moment, time seems to stand still. Long yin. In the next second, 2 huge arcs flashed out, and Jangl swung his knife. The void shuddered, and within a kilometer of a radius, all the shells were cut open, and then burst into flames, falling to the surface one after another. 10,000. Chapter 121. Advertise here. Boom. Thunder in the sky rang, the wind and clouds changed, and the sky became darker. Whirring whirring. The sound of the wind became more urgent. Jangl Liú's figure fell, his legs bent slightly, and he stood firmly on the bow of the boat, looking up to the sky. The pitch-black shells are still bombarding continuously. Hundreds of warships fired in one round, and the number of shells was difficult to calculate. They roared from all directions without leaving a blind spot. Letterfield stood at the stern, the umbrella sword poked out like a phantom, and the shells burst like fireworks. The other crew members are trying to shield the shells around the hull to prevent them from falling. Boom 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 boom. The deafening shelling sounded through the sky, and the second round of volleys arrived. Block it! Sebastian roared again and again. Beside him, Phylan jumped up from time to time, his expression dignified and serious. They can easily block 1 or 2 shells, but when the number is tens of thousands times, what about 100,000 times? Whether it is physical strength or will, mental strength is a severe test. Here, after all, it is not on land. In the case of protecting itself, the ship is even more important. 2 swords. Large rope tornado. Jangl Liú jumped up, his body turned, and the 2 swords made a tornado-like offensive. Boom. The fierce tornado swelled suddenly, emptying out the shells with a radius of 1,000 meters. Afterwards, his eyes were sharp, and his feet trampled in the void. 2 rounds. It's time for me to attack. A few steps later, Jangl Liú's 2 knives burned with a flower-like flame of sakura, his arms were raised, and the 2 knives were placed in front of him. Double shinso. In the next second, 2 knives slammed out of the warship ahead. The sharp slash shot out, as if 2 huge artillery shells were bombarded in the fleet of warships in an instant. The powerful slash penetrated the hull, smashing 4 or 5 warships in the blink of an eye. Call slowly let out a breath, his figure jumped back again, swinging out his swords. The cannonball that had approached the pirate ship was bounced again by him and burst into the surrounding sea. Suddenly, there was a bang. A crew member groaned, was hit by a shell, and flew backwards. The shell exploded, blasting the ship's extension to pieces. Carefully, Waldo hurriedly supplemented the past and knocked the rest of the shells into flight. After a while, when the crew hurriedly put out the fire with seawater, he turned his head sweating profusely. Captain, what should we do? If this goes on, we won't be able to hold on for long. The artillery fire was too intensive and the attacks were too frequent. Marines attack at saturation is extremely difficult for them to deal with. Crack wipe. Immediately afterwards, cracks suddenly spread on the deck, and the cadre who stepped on it quickly stepped back and avoided. Bin Jack's face was pale, and this scene undoubtedly made the already dangerous situation even worse. Jangl Liú brandished a long knife and split the coming shells into fireworks, his expression dignified and serious. He looked at the rolling sea ahead, his eyes flickering. Isn't the tsunami coming yet? According to this weather, I'm afraid it will take some time. But it is difficult to know whether our ship, and the crew, can survive this period of time. Bing Jack shouted. Moreover, even if we survived Marine's offensive, when the tsunami arrives, whether we still have the strength to deal with such a disaster is a big question. Jangl Liú raised his head and looked at the sea that still seemed to accumulate energy. Call. He breathed out slowly, his eyes became cold. There is no doubt that this is a desperate situation. Maybe he alone can survive easily, but what's the point of that? He wants to keep everyone alive. Warships in all directions approached here while bombarding them. The closer the range, the higher the accuracy of their attacks. The Black Flag pirates, the more difficult it is to deal with. Such an offense is simple, but very effective, and extremely difficult to deal with. For Marine, the loss is just 1 shell. Boom. With a blast, the hull was bombarded again, burning into flames, and the nearby crew members were blown into the air with a scream. Nakan hurried over, and the others shifted their directions and quickly added up. Hody Jones, I want to fight too. Even as trainee crew members, what should we do? Even if it is to put out the fire, go to repair the ship. Arlong gritted his teeth and rushed out. He yelled, picked up the bucket on the boat, and plunged into the fire. Damn it, Arlong, do you think Lousy is a fool if you go to be prestigious? Hody Jones scolded and ran out soon. Leonard held his head, his complexion changed, his forehead was covered with cold sweat, and after taking a few deep breaths, he yelled. 2 bastards, don't you look like Lousy is a coward? Lousy is the prince of the left bank. The trainee crew also joined the battle, and the entire ship suddenly seemed busy. Jangl Liú kept all this in his eyes, and his heart was solemn, and there was a touch of relief. Everyone on the ship is working hard, and giving everything for this pirate group. Even the weak trainee crew members are doing everything at this moment. As the captain, I must take you away from here. Boom. In the sky, thunder rang, golden lightning shining on people's faces, flickering and flickering. Suddenly, shining golden light lit up from the front. Vardo narrowed his eyes and clenched his fists. It's Sengoku. Marine's front row of warships was already very close to them. Standing on the bow of the ship, Sengoku shone with golden light all over, swelling rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a golden Buddha and appeared in front of them. Sengoku of Buddha, where's our artillery? Counterattack them, bastard! Guy Ram yelled. He quickly made the surrounding things into squares and spread them into a wall to block the bombardment of the shells. But the effect was not obvious. One wall was blasted open, and the huge counter-shock force also caused blood to overflow from the corners of his mouth. Nothing is useful anymore, Guy Ram. It has just been blown to pieces by their shells. Sebastian said solemnly. Asshole, Guy Ram yelled angrily. On the warship, Sengoku shone with golden light, raised his right palm, and pointed his face solemnly at the pirate ship that was not far away. Hold my blow, black flag. The golden halo appeared, ripples rippling in circles, and then, he pressed his palm towards the void in front of him. The impact of the Buddha. The shock wave whizzed away in an instant, and in the blink of an eye he had reached the front of the black flag pirate ship. The terrible shock has not yet arrived, and the entire ship has begun to tremble violently. The crew members changed color and were all startled there. At this moment, a figure stepped out of the bow, 2 spatula lights flashed, bright light reflected in everyone's eyes. 2 swords. Teacher Tiger. The golden shock wave was chopped apart and whizzed past both sides of the pirate ship. Holding a pair of knives, the stalwart figure standing on the bow of the ship spoke calmly. Like a huge mountain falling, a meteorite hit the sea, and the sea collapsed. The figure jumped again, the 2 knives were raised above his head, and he dived towards the sea. Tsunami. Concentrate, don't be frightened by the opponent's offense. The voice fell, the sound of swords rang into the ears, and the long sword flashed, like waving a huge mountain, crashing into the sea. The tsunami has not come yet. Thank you for reading this story at hotmtnovel.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Grab the hull next to you, in the next second, you may feel a slight sloshing. In everyone's eyes, their captain leapt up from the bow, raised his double knives, and slashed into the sea like that. Next, we are leaving here. Before that, guys. At this moment, everyone's pupils shrank and their faces were shocked. Then let me create a tsunami. The low voice came out, making everyone come back to their senses and look at the figure. It's here. Chapter 122. Advertise here. The wind is roaring. The air pressure can crush everything at this moment. Visible to the naked eye, that knife slashed above the sea surface, and the force of more than 10,000 jun exploded at this time. The sea level sank in an instant, and in an instant, it sank hundreds of meters. The sea surface of several thousand meters has collapsed. Woo 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 woo. The weird whistling sound, the air roar resounding, shocked everyone's heart. On the warship, all marines have changed color. Damn. Sengoku roared. Quick, 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 turn the bow and avoid this huge storm. This kid is attacking with huge mass and is going to set off a big tsunami. Sora shouted at the same time. Time passed quickly, and a dozen breaths passed in a blink of an eye. Buzzing buzzing. Everyone's ears are oscillating with such a dense sound, as if countless bees flap their wings and chirp together at this time. But they know that this is not a real bee, but the air is changing rapidly because of the pressure and the sea because of the drastic changes. Boom. In a trance, as if some broken sound sounded. Chi-chi-chi-chi-chi-chi 18 chi-chi-chi. Above the sea, air currents, accompanied by water jets, sprayed into the sky, forming a weird situation that would never be seen in ordinary days. Then everyone saw it. The sunken sea surface began to rebound quickly, and in a blink of an eye it exceeded the previous height, reaching 100 meters, 150 meters. The first to bear the brunt is the black flag pirate ship. Crunch. The wooden boat made an unsupportive sound, and everyone on the boat looked terrified, shocked, and yelled. Where is this a little trembling? Captain, forcibly set off a tsunami. We are at the center of the storm. Even if we are destroyed, we will be the first to be destroyed. Can you survive it? Too crazy. Different roars came out at this moment, and a large amount of seawater was spreading down like a rainstorm. In the sky was black, and huge golden lightning was faintly visible. A figure descended from the sky, landed on the bow, standing steadily. Looking at the trembling ship, the terrifying crew grinned. Grab the thing next to you. This time, we will definitely be able to survive. Afterwards, Jangl looked forward. The sea surface was collapsed with a knife, and the huge potential energy that rolled up formed huge waves in an instant. At this moment, the black flag pirate ship is on top of this wave. The violent shaking made everything fluctuate, and the line of sight was distorted because of the rain. The aftermath of this knife is extremely majestic. Large waves swept through, rolled up, and accumulated into the first huge tsunami. Centered on the place where the black flag pirate group was located, it radiated quickly to the surroundings. In a blink of an eye, it was already roaring and rolling, reaching a wave of tens of meters high, flooding the first wave of nearby warships. Quickly, avoid it. Tsunami. Big tsunami. The Marines were horrified at this moment, and all they could see was the sky full of seawater, huge waves, like a tall building, rolling over mountains and seas. This is a natural disaster. Manpower is hard to resist. Wow. Woohoo. The water splashed everywhere, the wind roared, and the currents gathered into the water dragons, rushing forward and backward, opening their mouths, and swallowing them. Kuzan. On the warship, Zephyr spoke in a deep voice. Behind him, with a white bandage on his body, a young Marine with a solemn face stepped out. The waves in front of us rolled over, already reaching a height of 100 meters, and the gust of wind came on the surface, like a knife wind, which caused pain on the human face. The rain fell from the sky and gathered into an unimaginable torrential rain. With your ability, are you sure? Zephyr asked. I tried my best, but maybe, I can't save everyone, teacher. Kuzan took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. Go. Faced with such a natural disaster, only you can try to stand here. Zephyr said solemnly. Kuzan nodded, took a deep breath, looked at the majestic tsunami ahead, his eyes solemn and serious. After a few steps, he suddenly jumped from the bow, stretching out his hands at the same time. Sennin's aura swept out at this moment, white mist sprayed out all around his body, and the water droplets and sea water that were close to him were frozen. Ice Age. When it fell on the surface of the sea, Kuzan's feet were already frozen, and the deep voice came out. Crack wipe. A crisp sound sounded, and the water droplets in the air solidified at this moment, exuding a chill. The temperature dropped suddenly at this moment. The white breath spread rapidly on the sea, wherever it passed, it was frozen into ice, and when it touched the roaring tsunami, it was also frozen. The cold air radiates to the surroundings at a very fast speed. It's just a breathing room, everything around is frozen. A frosty world appeared in everyone's eyes. Call. Breathing out a white breath, Kuzan's eyes showed fatigue. With his current ability, he can only freeze the sea surface in a radius of 3 kilometers. Compared to the entire huge battlefield, it is obviously not enough, but this is his full power. The development of Logia fruit also takes time, and it also has strict requirements for my strength. Compared to the terrible scope of freezing a huge area in the future, Kuzan now undoubtedly looks very immature. Is it the limit? On the warship, Zephyr looked solemn. Not far away, the unfrozen tsunami swallowed more than a dozen warships in an instant. The marine on it could not even make a sound, so it was broken up and disappeared. And this means that in this short tsunami, Marine lost about 30 warships and 3,000 elite Marines. Has it ended? That Marine, is it Logia? He froze the tsunami. So amazing. At this time, watching the frozen waves and tsunami ahead, the Marines were also shocked, with a sense of rejoicing after the disaster. It's just that the sudden cold temperature made them shiver, hug their shoulders, and breathe in the air. Frozen tsunami waves, black flag pirate ship. Captain. The tsunami is frozen. What should I do next? The crew said solemnly. Marine is worthy of being Marine. There are many strong players, and even the tsunami can deal with it. Call. Slowly exhaling, Jangl Liú glanced at the ice and snow world in front of him, then grinned. It's easy. Break this ice cube is enough. The tsunami is not just caused by me. My knife is just an introduction. After a pause, his eyes narrowed. That is the power of nature. At the stern, Letterfield trembled, his pupils contracted, and he looked at the distant sea. I heard the sound. Heavy and majestic, it is roaring and angry. Chapter 123. Advertise here. When I saw it, it was pitch black, and the day seemed to turn into night, and I couldn't see anything. Letterfield squinted his eyes, and the breeze blew through his robe, brushing the hair on his shoulders, a heavy smell made his expression serious. The wind is very urgent. Muttered, he turned around abruptly and grabbed the thing next to him. On the frozen sea, Sakazuki's whole body was tied with a bandage, and even his face was sealed, so he couldn't see his face clearly. He raised his right hand and pointed it at the sky, revealing only a pair of ferocious eyes, ferocious and cold. Meteor volcano. There is no unnecessary nonsense, everyone can see the hatred in Sakazuki's eyes. In the 3-on-1 battle, he was killed by a second move, which caused a huge trauma and shadow to his soul. This battle is the time to wash away the shame. Gudong-dong. A large number of red bubbles burst out, and drops of magma fell from the arms, dripping onto the ice, burning white mist. The next second, Sakazuki threw a fist and aimed it at the void ahead. In the sky, red streamers gleamed, and then instantly turned into the shape of a fist, like a meteor, whizzing and falling towards the black flag pirate ship. You have become a mummy, are you still not convinced? Sakazuki. Jangl Liú grinned and jumped out in one step, and the double knives slashed out towards the sky. 2 swords. Exterminate the blow. The wind swept up, the air hummed, and the falling meteors burst into flames in the sky, and gradually extinguished as they fell. Sakazuki looked up at the scene of the sky ahead, and his eyes became more gloomy. What made him even more angry was that after the figure swung a knife, he ignored the sky and didn't look back at the explosion. Instead, he waved his double knives again, and flew toward the frozen sea ahead. 2 swords. 15,000 tons of heavy blows. Tsunami. A deep voice spread throughout the audience. Above the flagship, Sora, Sengoku, Zephyr and others' expressions suddenly changed. He wants to do it again. This guy, a lunatic. He caused the tsunami so unscrupulously that he would involve himself in it. Every sound resounded in the air. At this moment, the Marines' hearts were picked up again, and their faces were ugly. At the same time, Jangl Liú slashed on the frozen sea. Only by giving up one's life and forgetting to die, can there be hope of survival from desperate situation. Crack wipe. The ice quickly cracked, followed by the terrifying weight, and in a sudden, the sea collapsed again, and the coverage area was wider than the previous one. In a blink of an eye, the entire sea boiled, the ice shattered by the weight, and another breath, the sea surface collapsed and rolled up. Boom. The thunderous sound shook out, and a huge tsunami quickly formed and appeared in front of everyone. The Black Flag pirate ship shook violently, but the crew had a foreboding that they all grasped the objects around them firmly, not allowing themselves to be thrown out by the sudden impact. In an instant, drops of water fluttered, shot out, and rained down on people. The rain poured down and whizzed down. Wow! The waves rolled, and it was more than 100 meters in the blink of an eye. Get ready. Hurry up. Damn, Jangl Liú can actually cause a tsunami. This is almost Whitebeard's power. The Marines shouted in shock, shaking their hearts. Kuzan. Zephyr shouted again. The latter took a deep breath and was about to repeat the trick to freeze the entire ice surface, but when he raised his head and looked into the distance, the whole person was stunned. Boom 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 boom. The sound of marching like 1,000 horses, at this moment, spread into everyone's ears, neighing, roaring, weird howling, like the roar of the devil, making the scalp numb and shuddering at the same time. The gods of water. Acura Laguna. The real tsunami is coming. There was a scream, but it was soon drowned in wind and rain. Yes, the gods of water are here. After Jangl Liú caused the sea to collapse twice in a row and caused a small tsunami, the huge tsunami was finally pulled up and became angry. It is like a huge and incomparable beast, crushed in mighty force. In just an instant, he bit the marine fleet behind the Black Flag pirate ship into his mouth. Then, another bite swallowed the Black Flag pirate ship. Hold the captain, tie them with a rope, and don't let those with fruit power out of our sight. You must live, everyone. Even Jangl Liú had nothing to do in the face of such a huge tsunami. The mighty, all you can see is sea water. A light slap, more than 10,000 tons of strength. There is nowhere to hide, and there is no way to face it head on. Even if you split a wave, what about the next wave? Suddenly, he was already swallowed by the waves, and his violent force instantly impacted, causing him to creak. At the same time, there was a sense of weakness that quickly emerged, making him immediately lose his ability to move. Quote. Is this the curse of the sea? Quote. Experience the curse of devil fruit personally, Jangl Liú is very weak. All the power was extracted at this moment. In the sea, he couldn't do anything, not even a finger. I can only close my breath and wait quietly for my partner to rescue me. But under such a tsunami, other people are too busy to take care of themselves, how can they care about him in a short time? Are you going to explain here? Holding his breath to the limit, he opened his mouth slightly, and he immediately heard the sound of dunk dunk, swallowing a mouthful of seawater into his abdomen. Unexpectedly, it would be such a way of death. Gradually, Jangl Liú's consciousness became distracted. They are dead or not? Sengoku was taken aback. Really? After a pause, he said emptily. This is good news. Outside, the gods of water are like real gods, venting his anger. The billowing waves, with the momentum of overwhelming mountains, flooded Marine's fleet with rumblings. But after that, we still need to determine the traces of this group of people. The powerful impact immediately caused Marine to become 70 good. I don't know how many warships, under such circumstances, lost their tracks. Thank you for reading this story at hotmtnovel.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. At the last second of the tsunami, I saw their ship and it was washed away. Compared to the Black Flag team, we should be more sure at this time how much Marine lost in this battle. When everything subsided a bit, after the tsunami impact, Marine flagship still floating on the sea, shouting loudly in the air, scanning the surging sea ahead. The first wave swallowed him. Now, it's totally unsure whether it's alive or dead. Sengoku said in a deep voice. Zephyr pushed away the pile of wood on his body and strode forward. Then, the world fell into darkness. He looked gloomy, looked at the wreckage floating on the sea, and took a deep breath. Vaguely, he saw a red shadow, coming to him at an extremely fast speed, and grabbed him. Where is the Black Flag group? Chapter 124. Advertise here. The City of Seven Waters. The pouring rain fell down, and the storm was dancing wildly over the City of Water. The strong wind blows, and the city is swaying in steps. People living in high places, sitting in the room, watching the storm, throbbed in their hearts. Acura Laguna. I don't know how long I haven't encountered such a big tsunami. In front of nature, people are really vulnerable. Ace Bagu sat on the stone at the door, walked through the rain screen, looked at the dark sea in the distance, and said with a sigh. Therefore, people traveling on this sea need a solid, tough boat that will not be destroyed even in the face of storms. Not far away, Tom the Murloc said aloud. He bent down and hugged the plank on the floor in his arms, and frowned when he looked at Ace Bagu sitting in the doorway. As an apprentice, don't you know to help me become a teacher? Ace Bagu was startled, then he smiled, and turned around to get up. The rain is getting smaller and the tsunami is receding, teacher. Tom turned his back to him. I'm not blind yet, I can see it naturally. The tsunami lasted for nearly 7 or 8 hours. It is already one of the most exaggerated records since the record. You can imagine how many people will be killed in the sea because of this disaster. Ace Bagu's complexion changed slightly, and the body he had just stood up stopped there. He suddenly stood on his toes and looked towards the coast. The storm receded at a very fast speed, and in a blink of an eye, it had subsided. Standing here, you can clearly see all the sights on the opposite bank. The waves receded, revealing a moist sandy beach, shells, starfish, and big fishes all struggling in a daze. Teacher, he suddenly yelled. This sound awakened Frankie, who was lying on the side, sleeping very soundly, and the nasal blisters on his nose broke. Open, is the meal served? Frankie stood up suddenly, touched his forehead and shouted. What the fuss about? I thought you were a lot more stable than Frankie. Tom frowned. Those guys look like you. Ace Bagu raised his hand and pointed to the shore. It can be seen that along the shore, there are several murlocs dragging their bodies out of the sea. When they were put down, they made a pop again and rushed towards the low-tide sea. Murloc, it's a murloc. Frankie saw it too and cried out in shock. Tom finally turned around, and when he saw the situation on the coast, his body shook slightly. Sure enough, it was a murloc. In addition to the murloc, there was also a human being. At this time, he bends over and spit out water, coughing, even here. Obviously, these guys are the survivors of this tsunami. It's lucky to be able to escape such a tsunami. Is it because of those murlocs? But, murlocs and humans. Tom squinted his eyes, thinking about this strange situation. But Ace Bagu had called Frankie and ran towards the shore. Go, I'll save people soon, Frankie. Okay, Frankie yelled in response. The two Saiyajin ran wildly, and when they came to the shore, they saw everyone clearly, especially when the murloc who was also young and his age was similar. They nodded. Need our help. When Arlong heard these words, he nodded gratefully. Our partner, we are still in the sea, I will bother you to help you search around. It is good, no problem, Ace Bagu and Frankie answered. Maybe it was because their teacher was a murloc, facing the murloc in front of them at this time, they didn't feel alive at all. The two of them plunged into the sea with a fierce sun. The sea at low tide is obviously still fluctuating, and the waves are also very big. It is quite difficult for them to dive in to find people. There is one there. But soon, Ace Bagu saw a figure floating in the water, floating weakly there, waving for help. It's a human kid. After a while, Ace Bagu dragged him back to the coast and pressed his abdomen to spit out a lot of seawater before the man shouted. Yes, I'm saved. Leonard, it's great that you're okay. At this moment, Arlong dragged the swordsman's bodyguard and walked over, excitedly. Me, I was about to say something like this. Horty Jones dragged Valdo out of the water at this time, and Cyrus looked gloomy. There is no time, let you report each other's piece. Hurry up and find the captain. And Brother Letterfield. What about Brother Karma? He swam the farthest just now. Could he have found the captain and them? Before the ship was destroyed by the tsunami, I saw the deputy captain Letterfield and grabbed the captain, and he was tied to us. People shouldn't be too far away, look for them again. Everyone who woke up talked in a rush, with anxious and nervous expressions on their faces. Marine's siege, coupled with the arrival of the Shanghai Scream, plunged them into an unprecedented moment of desperation. In the face of such Tianwei, the Black Flag pirates, which had already reached its limit, a wave was shot to pieces. And they can only rely on a rope to confirm each other's existence in the vast ocean. In addition, the tsunami that lasted for nearly 7 or 8 hours, and the storm on the sea, all sorts of situations. In this situation, everyone has already reached the limit. Fortunately there are you, Sebastian, Arlong, and Horty. Cyrus let out a long breath, and a water arrow spouted from his mouth, shouting loudly. Where is Gairam? And Nakan, Big Brother Bin Jack? Horty Jones shouted again. But no one responded to them. Maybe everyone is still alive, just drifting to other places in the sea. Maybe in this disaster, they will say goodbye forever. In the face of the unknown, anything will happen. Arlong and Horty Jones looked ugly, and tears appeared in the eyes of the young Arlong. The dark clouds gradually dissipated, the strong wind became calm, and the sun was falling down. Let's help out, Frankie. Even if they are murlocs, they are almost at their limit. Is there still no trace of the captain? It must be okay. After a while, Karma dragged the ordinary crew members tied together ashore, his expression gloomy. Ace Bagu said. The two rushed into the sea again. Captain. Deputy Captain. Cyrus raised his head, looked at the light among the dark clouds, and said worriedly. Captain. Frankie nodded. Thank you for reading this story at hotmtnovel.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. The next second, there was a pop. Karma shook his head, then put down the crew, turned and rushed into the sea again. Sebastian gritted his teeth and rushed into the sea as well. Sebastian called. Chapter 125. Advertise here. The coast was quiet, and the sun was shining down. Looking into the sky, a rainbow emerged. Waldo and others also woke up one after another. When their physical stamina and spirit had reached their limits, they could only sit there and wait quietly. No one speaks, and no one knows what to say at the moment. The atmosphere seemed a bit depressed, and the silence made the expressions on everyone's faces more and more ugly. Ace Bagu and Frankie have returned 5 or 6 times, and each time they can see the anxious and worried expressions of the people on the shore. Even tears have appeared in some people's eyes. Are these people pirates? What kind of person is their captain? The two people couldn't help but have such thoughts in their hearts. There is no doubt that the captain is deeply respected by this group of people. After persisting for 7 or 8 hours in the tsunami, they were lucky enough to survive. Their physical condition can be guessed, and they have fainted long ago when they were placed on ordinary people. But these people are still waiting. As time passed by, the shore became more and more silent. Have you not found it yet? Hody Jones trembled, clenching two fists. I'll look for it again. Arlong gritted his teeth. We don't have anything, how can something like a captain be? Karma shouted. Sebastian sat down beside Guy Ram, who was still spraying water, and patted his forehead to calm himself down. Waldo, what should we do now? Hearing this, Waldo raised his head. Keep looking, keep waiting. Karma is right, we are all fine, and the captain will be fine. He must be alive, and somewhere. The sun in the sky is getting brighter and brighter, and the air after the tsunami and storm is very fresh. A sea breeze blew, everyone raised their heads. There. Cyrus widened his eyes and pointed to the shore on the other side, with a glow of excitement in his eyes. Waldo shifted his gaze, and when he saw the three supporting each other, the corners of his mouth were bent and a big smile appeared. I knew it. They will never have anything to do. Ace Bagu and Frankie also looked at them curiously. They saw two figures staggering forward, one of them carrying a woman on his back. Trouble you, Letterfield, after saving me, I will ask you to save ours. Jangl Liú's face was pale and said weakly. Next time, don't do it. Forget about your demon fruit power, after going to the sea, is it a land duck? Ledfield smiled. Luckily there's you. Jangl Liú sighed. Yes, he sank into the sea and was swallowed by the tsunami, falling into the weakest moment of his life. If Letterfield hadn't appeared in time, no matter how strong he was on land, he would still inevitably die. Letterfield smiled and sighed slightly. Fortunately to have you. He said softly in his heart. Joining the Black Flag is the future he dreams of and the most fortunate thing in his life. There is a crazy, unreliable, but safe captain who has a partner who can give his back to the other party and depend on life and death. Drinking, eating meat, singing and dancing, this is the life he dreams of, and it will be everything he sees. Letterfield, Captain. At this time, everyone else rushed over and shouted excitedly. It seems that everyone is basically fine. This is really good news. Letterfield glanced around, then looked at Leonard and others with a smile. Even the three intern brothers are alive and well. After a pause, he released Jangl Liú again, and the latter fell to the ground. In comparison, our captain is in the worst condition today. This moment must be remembered, everyone will have the capital to laugh at. Jangl Liú rolled his eyes and lay down on the beach, looking at the blue sky and the dazzling sunlight, grinning. Ha 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 ha. A burst of laughter rang out in the next second. We are all alive. Yes, there is nothing more important than this. Everyone was there, except for the boat that was crushed on the sea, everyone was alive. After the disaster, they gathered on this sea. After a while, Jangl Liú stood up. Did you help save my crew? He looked at the two young people in front of him, grinned and said, with a unique affinity and charm. Ace Bagu was stunned, and Frankie was stunned. Find flowers. The two were shocked by this young man's bearing. It was the first time they saw such a man, confident, gentle, but with a trace of dominance. Just like the pirate they had seen not long ago. No, there is a difference between the two, the man in front of him is more profound. We just helped a little bit. Ace Bagu said. Thank you very much, too. Jangl Liú grinned. Tell me, your names, too, we will definitely repay you. Waldo and others stood aside, also laughing. Yes, we will repay you well. Are there any wishes? We will definitely help if we can bring it up. 00. The kindness of the two brothers moved us. Chaotic sounds came into their ears, and both Ace Bagu and Frankie scratched their heads in embarrassment, their cheeks flushed. No, we just helped a little bit. If I wish, I have thought about going out to see the outside world. After Ace Bagu finished speaking, Frankie said with a smile. We are the City of Seven Waters, Teacher Tom's apprentice. The two reported their names, and Jangl Liú was stunned. This is easy. After our ship is built, you can go to sea with us. He looked at the two of them carefully, and he found that they were very similar to the images in the anime, and the smile on his face suddenly increased. Jangl Liú looked up, a murloc, standing on a high platform in the distance, looking down, and said aloud. At this time, a calm voice came from the front. The calm young man standing aside also said. Both Ace Bagu and Frankie exclaimed. Jangl Liú smiled slightly, then thanked Mr. Tom. Everyone is in a shipwreck. If you don't mind, come to my place and rest. My name is Ace Bagu. Teacher. Jangl Liú grinned lightly. Going to sea, he went to the City of Seven Waters in order to visit the world-famous shipbuilder, but he did not expect that the two sides would encounter this situation. 10,000. Thank you for reading this story at hotmtnovel.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Frankie laughed happily when he heard the words. That's great, my name is Frankie, the captain. It's really impossible to tell the worldly condition.